After logging in, Chen-gu noticed his username had changed into a purple color. Clicking on his account profile, he realized it was because the 30-minute video that he had posted the other day had been shared, viewed, recommended, and commented at least several thousand times already. With a cursory glance, Chen-gu found nothing useful, most of them were there simply due to curiosity. Who knows, perhaps this might work, maybe there are experts hiding on the internet. Chen-gu started writing a new thread to provide more information about the mirror monster and used the special power afforded purple accounts to open a bounty thread. After playing the game on the video, I realized I'm now being haunted by the creature inside the mirror. Asking for help on how to remove this threat. The replies came pouring in mere seconds later. OP1, you're still alive. OP, listen to me and call this number. Tell them you need help, you can thank me later. Ghosts are nothing but memories that were left behind in the physical world. Killing it will only earn you bad karma. Kindness goes a long way. OP, have you tried reasoning with it? Education is the best solution. If there's something strange in your neighborhood, who you gonna call? Ghostbusters. If there's something weird and it don't look good, who you gonna call? Ghostbusters. Mix yellow bean, white rice, and Indian ink together. Soak them in salt water for 15 minutes. Spread them on the ground to watch them grow into powerful bean warriors. I once saw a video that described the story of a man who was also haunted by a female ghost. To deal with her, he bought a gun, and when the female ghost returned that night, the man shot himself and later dragged the ghost into the bedroom too. OP, serious though, listen to me, this method will definitely work. Go find an iron sword, preferably one that has tasted blood before. Ghosts are nothing but special magnetic energy, and such a sword will be able to harm them. After leaving the forum, Chen-gu tossed his phone to the side, spacing out as he sat in his chair. Combating the mirror monster meant putting his life on the line, he definitely could not rely on these half-baked online suggestions. After a roundabout detour, Chen-gu pulled out the black phone again. He knew he had to rely on the black phone because it was the only thing that was trustworthy. However, the black phone operated on the law of equivalent exchange, to gain something of equal value had to be lost. After several days of trial and error, Chen-gu had gained some understanding regarding the hidden laws of the black phone, such as its mission reward structure. Easy and normal missions rewarded items that would supplement the operation of the haunted house, only nightmare missions would provide rewards that were directly beneficial to Chen-gu, like special powers. In other words, to deal with the creature inside the mirror, completing easy and normal missions were pointless, he needed the reward from the nightmare mission. However, Chen-gu was hesitant because he knew how dangerous nightmare mission, he could easily attract another dangerous specter on top of the mirror monster. What should I do? Take the stakes or wait a little while longer? It was then that Chen-gu realized it was already a new day, meaning the daily missions had been refreshed. Easy mission, if you want to provide the visitors a scary experience, then first you have to pay notice to the rhythm and tempo of their experience in the haunted house. Setting off the scare too early might cause the visitors to lose their interest, so it is suggested that you install some sound detectors or surveillance cameras in the haunted house to keep track of your visitors' progress. Normal mission, you've achieved the criteria to enable the first expansion of the haunted house. Search for a suitable location soon. Due to the current space limitation, you are unable to perform any trial missions to unlock scenarios. Nightmare mission, there are weird sounds coming from the bathroom every midnight. If you want to know why, follow my directions. Daily missions will refresh every day at midnight. User can only apply for one mission each day, and the reward corresponds to the difficulty of the mission. Beware. The more difficult the mission, the more dangerous it'll be, so please choose carefully. Chen-gu read the mission descriptions. Since he temporarily could not complete the normal mission, he skipped it. Thus, he was left with the choice of the easy mission or nightmare mission. When Uncle Sue gets me the money tomorrow morning, it should take less than a day to purchase all the necessary surveillance, but it'll take more than that to install it all. According to the description, the nightmare mission is related to the bathroom. It sounds creepy. Chen-go was caught between a rock and a hard place. He was not confident that he could finish the easy mission, and even if he did, the reward would not be that great. However, the nightmare mission was too dangerous. After all, it all started inside the bathroom. He sat mired in his thoughts inside the props room. Before he came to a decision, the sound of sawing came again, this time, more distracting than before. Chen-go tilted his head back and was sure that the source was again the third floor. I've already carried out all 4 of the dolls, what else is it cutting? Chen-go found the creature increasingly irksome. After putting the sewn dolls back into his pocket, he rushed up the stairs to the 3rd floor holding his trusty hammer. When he arrived at the entrance to the murder by midnight scenario, he was shocked by what he saw. There were mirror pieces lying around the entrance, and there were scratch marks on the wooden door. The creature has been clawing at the door. What is it up to? Chen-ji's back was covered with cold sweat. He could imagine a monster holding the mirror pieces while running around the building when he was asleep. He would never allow such a dangerous existence to live under the same roof as him. Normally a nice guy, Chen-go had sour expression at that moment. He locked the door to the murder by midnight scenario behind him and walked down the corridor, gripping the hammer. He stalked into every room to shatter every mirror he could find on the 3rd floor. The sound of glass shattering echoed through the night. Chen-go felt more like himself when he reached the end of the 3rd floor corridor. During the first nightmare mission, the creature was held back by the doll who sat before the mirror. When it was attacking He-san, it had to retreat when Xiao-wan strode into the room. However, after assaulting He-feng, it gained the ability to leave the mirror. It's growing, and it's growing fast. Chen-go knew he could not wait anymore. His haunted house was finally on its way back, and he could not allow it to be ruined by an unknown creature. After leaving the scenario and locking the door once more, Chen-go switched on the black phone to accept the nightmare mission with a do-or-die determination. Hopefully the reward for this mission will be powerful enough. Yes. The screen glowed, and the actual nightmare mission description started to surface. The specters favored, your courage is admirable. The nightmare mission this time is both a test and a reward. The name of the game is Deep Water. It can allow you to bypass the line between the living and the dead, giving you the opportunity to see those who have unfortunately passed away. Mission requirement: enter the bathroom alone at 3:30 a.m. Lock the door and turn off the lights. Fill up the tub with water and light a candle by the side before lying in it. The period between 3:30 and 3:40 a.m. is the time of a day when yin energy is most concentrated. It is also when the yin and yang cycle of the day converge. What you need to do is hold your breath at 3:44 a.m. and submerge yourself underwater, thinking about the name of the person you wish to meet the most. When time enters the twilight period between darkness and light, you'll be able to see them at the edge of living and dead. Mission will be accomplished if you see said individuals. If you do not, the mission will be automatically completed after holding your breath for 60 seconds. Chen-go had a complicated feeling after reading the mission description. Compared to the first nightmare mission, this mission seemed a lot simpler. Closing one's eyes for 30 minutes in a scary environment required superhuman courage and staunch constitution, but holding one's breath for 60 seconds seemed doable for most. However, it was exactly because it was doable by most that he was worried. This was a nightmare mission, it could not be that simple. Similar to the previous nightmare mission, the location is the bathroom, but the difference is that I'm required to sink myself inside the bathtub and hold my breath for 60 seconds. He carefully studied every single step of the mission. Including the preparation time, at most, the mission would require 15 minutes, what scary thing could possibly happen in such a short amount of time? Chen-go was interested not only because the mission looked simpler but also due to a line among the mission description, allow you to bypass the line between the living and the dead, giving you the opportunity to see those who have unfortunately passed away. Different from most, Chen-gu became calmer during periods of duress. He sat in his chair, contemplating the possibilities. His parents had disappeared in an abandoned countryside hospital, leaving behind nothing but a doll and the black phone. The black phone was activated when he was about to give up on the haunted house. During the first nightmare mission, the doll became the thing that saved his life. So, the question worth pondering was, could the doll and the black phone have been purposely left behind by his parents to act as clues to their whereabouts? If that was true, then this second nightmare mission would be additionally interesting. Perhaps, they're trying to contact me through this method to provide me with more information. Of course, this was merely Chen Ji's speculation. To be perfectly honest, even if the nightmare mission was not a plan set up by his parents, Chen-gu would carry on with this mission. Allow you to bypass the line between the living and the dead, giving you the opportunity to see those who have unfortunately passed away. For Chen-gu, this was a chance to confirm once and for all whether his parents were still alive or not. If he did not see his parents, then it meant that they were merely missing and still alive. If he did see them, then it would validate Chen Ji's first speculation: his parents left the black phone behind for a purpose, probably as a channel to siphon information to him. Perhaps the black phone even contained his parents' actual last words. Looks like I have no choice. Chen-gu glanced at his watch. It was already 2:55 a.m., 35 minutes until the starting time of the mission. I've wasted too much time shattering those mirrors on the third floor, I've got to hurry. The mission requirement was for him to lie in a bathtub filled with water, but the only bathroom with a bathtub was inside the murder by midnight scenario. One of the doors of the workers' passageway was connected to a bathroom with a bathtub. It was the trap door Chen-gu had been using to enter the scenario and to shuttle He-san's group out of the scenario. There are only 35 minutes left. There isn't enough time to go look for a hotel with a bathtub, so it looks like I'll need to do this within the mirror monster's territory. Since the decision had been made, Chen-gu no longer hesitated. He carried the 4 dolls with him and exited the haunted house in the middle of the night to head toward the park's canteen to grab 2 cleavers. Even though these haven't been used to slaughter pigs or sheep before, I did see the workers use them to prepare chicken and fish. I suppose you can consider them blades that have tasted blood before. Chen-gu placed the blades beside his nose to take a sniff. Instead of the expectant smell of bloodshed, all he could smell was the heavy scent of green chilies and onions, which caused his eyes to water. After returning to the haunted house, Chen-gu ran between the fake bathroom and the toilet, carrying buckets of water. When it was 10 minutes to the start of the mission, he finally managed to fill up the tub. Everything is ready, it's time to start. The murder by midnight scenario's front door was closed, and Chen-gu entered the bathroom from the workers' passageway. As demanded by the black phone, he was inside the bathroom alone. The mirror inside the bathroom had already been shattered by Chen-gu. The pieces made scrunching noises as his footsteps shuffled over them. It was quite noisy transporting the water, so the mirror monster should know about my presence by now, but that doesn't matter, I only need to hold my breath for 1 minute and everything will be fine. From Chen Ji's perspective, the mission was weird but not that dangerous. He locked the bathroom's door from within and rested the doll left behind by his parents against the door. Then, he placed the 4 ragdolls that represented the lingering spirits of Ping and apartment's victims around the bathtub. Everyone, I'll be depending on your help later. Please help me fight for that 1 minute. Similar to before, he switched on his phone's recording camera and placed it on a suitable table to start the recording. However, the place was so dark that the screen was almost black, except for a fuzzy human-shaped shadow. At the 3-minute mark, Chen-gu removed the contents from his pockets and placed them on the counter. Following the black phone's instructions, he lit a candle and stuck it to the bathtub's rim. The dancing candlelight became the sole source of light in the room. Glancing downwards, Chen-gu saw his faces reflected in the many mirror pieces that littered the floor. He removed his shirt and took a step toward the bathroom. Ripples could be seen breaking the water's surface. The bathtub was shallow, but due to the dim lighting, Chen-gu found himself unable to see the bottom. Touching the water with his fingers, a chill ran up his arm and spread through his body, causing him to shiver. This mission sure is freaky. After taking one last look at the time, Chen-gu stepped into the tub while holding the two cleavers. As he sat down, the water overflowed, drenching the mirror pieces. It's cold. Chen-gu could feel his body temperature dropping, even his heart rate had slowed. The bathroom was quiet except for the dripping sound of water that fell down from the edge of the bathtub. Just 1 minute, after this 1 minute, I'll have the reward, and the most important question on my mind will be answered. Chen-gu breathed in and out to control his heart rate, waiting for 3:44 a.m. to arrive. Inside the darkened bathroom, Chen-gu sat alone inside the bathtub. He breathed in and out, circulating the air inside his lungs. The time noted on the black phone was precisely 3:42 a.m. He only had one chance, so he had to be careful. The room was quiet, and he could not hear anything from outside the corridor. The monster from the mirror did not seem to be around. Time ticked by. Chen-gu put the electronic watch he had brought purposely for this occasion on his side. When the digits changed to 3:43, he trained his focus and opened his mouth wide to slowly take in his breath. As the candlelight flickered, Chen-gu slowly submerged his body into the water. His eyes were glued to the electronic watch. He had never been so focused in his life before. When the digit changed again, Chen-gu slipped underneath the water surface without hesitation. It was finally 3:44 a.m. The icy water flooded him from all sides. Submerging oneself in a bathtub filled with water in the middle of the night, the experience was unique to say the least. The water numbed the senses, and it felt like there was nothing but darkness and oneself slowly falling into the abyss. There was complete silence other than the pounding of one's heart inside one's ears. The icy water pulled every sensory receptor in one's body taut. Lying inside the bathtub, Chen-gu abandoned all thoughts as he listened to his heartbeat and started the countdown. 60 seconds, I only need to hold on for 60 seconds. This was the first time he had done something like this as well. The surface of the water seemed to merge with the darkness. The candlelight, which felt like it was going out, drifted away from Chen-gu like he was slowly falling into the ocean. 1, 2. After the initial 10 seconds, time seemed to have slowed down. The sound of water attempted to swallow even his heartbeat. All he could see was darkness. Chen-gu repeated his parents' names in his heart and held his pose with both his hands holding the cleavers and allowing his body to be carried along by the flow of the water. The oxygen in his lungs was fast depleting. Chen-gu was starting to feel uncomfortable, like something heavy was pressing down on his body. 15, 16. Every time his heart pumped, it exhausted the oxygen inside his lungs. As his heart slowed, so did the time. Every second felt like an eternity. The feeling of discomfort intensified. It felt like a pair of hands was pressing down on his neck, slowly tightening around it. Chen-gu opened his eyes, but underneath the water, he was unable to see anything. It felt like he had traveled to another world and was trapped in it. 3 or 4 seconds later, his face turned startlingly white. How long has it been? Should be over soon, right? Suddenly, there was a violent ripple that crossed the surface, and a weird sound crossed through the heavy silence. The sound seemed to come from the outside corridor. Chen-gu had no idea how he managed to hear it so clearly. Perhaps it was something done on purpose to distract his focus. Footsteps. Someone is walking outside the corridor. His heartbeat, which had slowed, started to race, and his body tensed involuntarily. That is probably the mirror monster. Hopefully the dolls will be able to hold it off for another 30 seconds for me to finish the mission. His brain slowed to a crawl, and a buzzing sound appeared in his ears. Chen-gu was not doing so well, and the footsteps from the corridor only made it worse. He tried his best to focus and continued to repeat his parents' names internally as he returned to counting his heartbeat. 28, 29. Chingu was unable to tell whether it was the water that had distorted the sound, but he swore the footsteps had begun to speed up, as if the opposite party was desperately trying to get into the bathroom. Several seconds later, Chingu felt like a heavy piece of boulder was falling on top of his chest. The blood vessels on his neck started to pop. His limbs were going weak with cold. His brain was slowing down, and only Chin-Ji's determination was making him hold on. Bang! 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 Something slammed into the bathroom door without warning. Chingu felt like his heart was in a vice. The thing outside the door had lost its patience. He knew he was reaching his limit. The last wisp of oxygen inside his lungs had been depleted. Every second was torment. 39, 40. When he counted to 40, Chen-Ji's brain started to shut down. He had lost the ability to even keep the countdown going. If he allowed the little focus that he had left to waver, Chingu was sure he would drown. The sense of asphyxiation blotted out his thoughts, and all that remained in his head were his childhood memories with his parents. A vein was pulsing weakly on Chen-Ji's neck, and his hands that held the cleavers started to relax. He felt himself drifting toward the edge of death, and it was not until then that he truly understood the meaning of that sentence inside the mission description. It can allow you to bypass the line between the living and the dead, giving you the opportunity to see those who have unfortunately passed away. What it really meant was, as night changed into day, those on the brink of death could peer into the other world. Chingu stared unblinkingly at the surface of the water. His pupils were dilated, and it felt like he was pulling away from the surface. However, he could not see anything or anyone other than darkness, a darkness that was so quiet and yet filled with so much despair. The feeling of one's lungs being squeezed by an invisible hand was a sensation that could not be put into words. No, if I stay down here any longer, I really will die in this bathtub. He believed he had survived half a minute already, and the people that Chingu wanted to see had not appeared. He had given up hope, or rather, he was glad that his parents did not appear. This meant that they were still alive. His arms touched the cold surface of the bathtub's bottom. Using the last vestige of rationality, Chingu decided it was time to give up. His arms increased in strength to push himself out of the water when Chingu felt something was wrong. Something was pressing down on his head, stopping him from coming up to the surface. His dilated pupils focused to one point as Chingu looked up, but there was nothing there. The dolls had sealed the door and the area surrounding the bathtub. The mirror monster should not have been able to come in, so who was behind this? More veins started to pop on Chen-Ji's neck. His face was pretty much lifeless. At the very last minute, he used the last trace of energy in his body to grip the cleaver and wave it above his head. The extended period of oxygen deprivation had pushed his body and spirit to their limits. Like a string pulled taut, they could snap at any moment. The cleaver cut through the surface, causing the water to splash all around. Chingu felt like he made contact with something, and he heard a crisp snap beside his ears before the mysterious force above his head suddenly disappeared. Without hindrance, Chingu sat up in the bathtub immediately, gasping for air as he broke the surface. Chilling water slid down Chen-Ji's hair. He was reeling from the fact that he had come so close to death. His chest was pumping unevenly, his lips turning from pale to purple, his hands still gripping the cleavers. He felt more collected 2 minutes later, and the lightheadedness dissolved. Wiping the water droplets from his face, Chingu stood up unsteadily from the bathtub. With the weak light of the candle, he could see that nothing had changed inside the bathroom. I swear I managed to cut something earlier. There was that snap too. Chingu looked around him and saw a cut left on the edge of the tub. Did I accidentally cut the tub? That shouldn't be it. There was definitely someone holding my head down in the water earlier, and the cleaver should have cut that person. Desperate to know the truth, Chingu climbed out of the tub to grab the phone that was still recording. He stopped the recording and replayed it from the start. At 3:30 a.m., I sat inside the bathtub, and nothing happened on screen until 3:43 a.m. Chingu leaned against the wall as his eyes glued themselves to the screen. At 3:44 a.m., he lay down in the tub, causing the water to overflow. Looking at it from another perspective, this does look rather creepy. When he was doing this in person, Chingu did not feel like it was all that odd, but looking at it through the camera's lens, there was something chillingly bizarre about this. Chingu glanced at the time stamp. For the initial 20 seconds after he submerged himself, everything was normal inside the bathroom. There was the occasional sound of water dripping. 10 seconds later, Chingu frowned. The video that was playing on screen was showing a different reality than he remembered. Based on his memory, by then, the footsteps should have been heard from the corridor, but it was absolutely peaceful on the screen. The audio did not pick up anything weird, definitely no sound of footsteps. 5 seconds later, the door slamming that Chingu remembered clearly also did not show up on screen. All that was captured on the video was the darkened surface of the water and the dancing candlelight. The footsteps and door slamming were all parts of my hallucination. When 50 seconds had passed, the originally peaceful water surface was disturbed by a copious amount of air bubbles. It was obvious that the Chingu in the video was close to his limits. However, right then, something happened on the screen that made chills crawl all over Chinji's body. There was a piece of shattered mirror the size of a palm lying beside the bathtub. Its surface started to cloud over like it had been swallowed by a dark fog. Eventually, a black shadow slowly extended itself from it. It leaned against the tub. The scene was definitely supernatural. Based on its build and features, it looked like Hifeng. The number of air bubbles started to increase, and the video was about to reach its climax. In the video, Chen Ji's body and mind were tested to their limits already, and he was about to give up. Chen Gu could see himself inside the tub moving upwards. However, just as his head was about to break the surface, the black shadow beside the tub suddenly reached out with both of its hands to press on his head. The shock caused water to stream into Chen Ji's nostrils, choking the man alive. Chen Gu struggled vehemently as the cleavers in his hands waved frantically above. The black shadow flickered like an image on an old television. The cleavers affected him but only slightly. At the most crucial moment, the ragdolls that were placed around the bathtub started to teeter like they were being blown by winds. The smallest among them tipped over and used its body to block the palm-sized mirror piece completely. The black shadow's body started to blur. It was then that Chen Ji's cleaver inadvertently made contact with its head, and the shadow disappeared. The cleaver flew out of Chen Ji's grasp, and before it landed on the floor, it scratched the edge of the bathtub, leaving a light mark. Almost at the same time, Chen Gu burst through the water surface. The video ended then. After knowing the truth, the desire within Chen Ji's heart to demolish that creature intensified. The thing has to be vanquished. Chen Gu saved the video and picked up the ragdoll that was lying on top of the mirror. The small girl's back had been cut by the sharp edge of the mirror, and her body was drenched. They're both existence from the other side, but their personalities are completely different. Some of them are just in it for the scare, and they're good at heart, while others harbor nothing but malice. Chen Gu dried his body and put on his clothes. He placed all the dolls inside his pocket, and it was then that he felt better. Shattering the mirrors is useless. It can still crawl out of the mirror, so how am I supposed to deal with a creature like this? The thing can appear and disappear at will and can't be found. I'm at a natural disadvantage dealing with things like this. Chen Gu picked up the palm-sized mirror out of curiosity, but he was shocked to realize the water droplets on it seemed to be moving with a will of their own. They trailed across the surface forming a number 3. Is this a taunt from the monster? 3, representing He-san, Hifeng, and myself? Or will it kill me within 3 days? Chen Gu had no clue what the number meant, but he was certain it wouldn't be anything good. Then again, do you really think I am afraid of you? One of these days, I'll yank you out of the mirror and put you out in the sun to scorch you alive. Chen Gu came up with the worst curse he could think of. He had come so close to dying earlier. After taking another deep breath, Chen-gu went to pick up the black phone. He did not have much anticipation, but when he saw the message that appeared on screen, his eyes lit up. The specters favored, you managed to hold your breath for 62 seconds. Congratulations for completing the nightmare mission. Obtain the mission reward Yin Yang Vision. Yin Yang Vision, see through the line that blurs between the two worlds. Use the Yang body to observe the Yin presence, a great upgrade to one's vision, other function currently unknown. Notice, you have completed 2 nightmare daily missions. After completing the 3rd nightmare mission, it will randomly unlock the trial mission for one of the scenarios. Completed 3 consecutive missions with more than a 95% completion rate, unlocking new feature My Friends from the Other Side, affection status. After reading through the series of messages, Chen-gu did not know what he should feel. The requirement of the nightmare mission was for him to hold his breath for 60 seconds. Due to the outside disturbance, he had already planned to surrender at around 50 or so seconds, and he would have failed the mission. However, the desire of the mirror monster to kill him had forced him to hold on for an additional few seconds, allowing him to complete the mission with a very close success. In a way, the appearance of the mirror monster was a blessing in disguise, because in the end, the result was positive. Chen-gu went through the black phone and realized how crucial this nightmare mission was. If he had failed the mission, not only would he not have earned the mission reward, the unlocking of the new scenario would have been delayed, and most importantly, the new function of the phone would not have been unlocked. Compelled by curiosity, Chen-gu clicked the new tab open. The interface changed, and 5 unfamiliar names appeared on screen. Current affection levels. Qin Guoheng, lingering spirit unfamiliar, you two can't be considered friends, he was helping you out of kindness. Du Ruoshui, lingering spirit unfamiliar. Qin Munan, lingering spirit unfamiliar. Qin Xiaoxiao, baleful specter slightly favorable opinion, you've managed to attract her attention. To her, you are slightly closer than a stranger. Zhanya, red specter crazy about you, you are a unique presence to her, she likes you, but only after you're dead. To increase the affection level, you could expose them to the screams of visitors that are wealthy with negative feelings, gift them presents that contain malice points, or complete their bloody heart mission. When the affection level reaches a certain point, they will selectively listen to your orders. Warning, only specters with deep malice and a dark history will be able to provide you with a bloody heart mission. Completing the mission will greatly increase the affection level and will give you the power to get them to help you complete something that isn't against their will. The new feature gave Chen-gu a deeper understanding of his friends. He removed the smallest doll from his pocket. This doll did not look that much different from the other dolls, at least physically, but the phone app had set her apart. She was the sole baleful specter among the family of lingering spirits. Something like you can be considered a baleful spirit. Chen-gu poked Xiao Xiao's cheek with his finger. Xiao Xiao, who was raised into the air, seemed to be a bit angry. She gave Chen-gu the impression of a little kitten who hadn't been weaned from milk, gnashing her teeth in a show of aggression. I suppose this is an accidental discovery. If Qin Xiaoxiao was the kind and gentle presence among the baleful spectre, then Zhangya was the complete opposite. In fact, this was the first time Chen-gu had come across the term red spectre. What exactly is the difference between a normal baleful spectre and a red spectre? Chen-gu tried to click on Zhangya's name, and the screen changed to reveal a blood-red interface. Are you sure you want to accept Zhangya's bloody heart mission? Warning. This mission contains a certain level of danger. The blood-red interface caused cold sweat to appear all over Chen Ji's forehead. But the phone says only specters with exceptionally deep malice and a dark history will be able to provide me with a bloody heart mission. Am I that lucky? To be able to win such a prize from my first draw? Actually, that was not the end of Chen Ji's thoughts on the matter. He thought to himself, if that's the case, I'd rather give up on such luck. However, afraid of how Zhangya might have reacted if she heard it, he kept it to himself. Crazy about me, but only after I'm dead. If that's not twisted, I don't know what is. After exiting the app, the fear brought on by the mirror monster had completely disappeared. Compared to the prize he had gotten from the Wheel of Misfortune, the shadow inside the mirror was nothing. However, this did not mean that Chin-gu would let it go. In contrast, Chin-gu had made it a threat that had to be removed no matter what. Only by removing it would the haunted house be safe. Unlocking my friends from the other side provided Chin-gu with more options. From how he saw it, this feature was to set up the foundation for the haunted house's spectral workers. As more features of the game got released, Chen-Ji's interest in it increased. After gaining an understanding of the new feature, Chen-gu turned to inspect his second reward, Yin-Yang Vision. The reward from nightmare missions would provide him with a personal upgrade. Chen-gu tried to look into the distance, but other than the ability to see slightly clearer in the dark, this Yin-Yang Vision did not seem to have any other uses. Perhaps this power requires a special environment to trigger, just like morticians' makeup. Chen-gu picked up a random mirror fragment from the floor and put it before his face. Physically speaking, there was not any noticeable change to his pair of eyes, they were similar to before. From the description, Yin-Yang Vision should grant me the ability to see stuff that normal people wouldn't be able to see, but... Chen-gu raised Xiao Xiao to his eyes, but he saw nothing but a normal ragdoll. Am I using it wrong, or is there a specific method to using the power? Chen-gu came up with nothing after some more trials, so he decided to put it on the back burner for now. Working his limbs, which had gone numb, Chen-gu stretched inside the bathroom. Then, he sat down inside the bathroom to edit his latest video. I've suffered so much. I wouldn't be able to face myself in the morning if I didn't share it with the world. He uploaded the original video onto the Supernatural forum. It was 4 a.m., so Chen-gu didn't expect any responses. However, the moment the new video was released, there was already a new comment. Hello, is this a game to attract ghosts? Lying inside the bathroom at midnight will call out the spirits. Chen-gu glanced at the first comment and was shocked to realize it came from the forum moderator. He contemplated it for a while before adding the game rules and descriptions under the video and editing the name of the video to "Why would someone voluntarily drown himself in his bathtub at home?" 2 minutes later, the comment floodgate had been opened. Chen-Ji's account had garnered quite a following already on the forum. In fact, some of the users who were already asleep were woken up by their friends just to take a look at the video. Lying inside a filled bathtub at 3:30 a.m. alone, even with the lights on, I wouldn't dare do that. This new video seems to be even more supernatural than the previous one. What is the shadow squatting beside the bathtub? Did you hear anything or see anything out of the ordinary under the water? Boss, please reply. The bathroom is the place with the heaviest yin energy of the entire building, and the bathtub is a sort of hollow where yin energy normally gathers. In feng shui, we call this Hua. OP dares to play such a crazy game at a place like this, no wonder he stumbled across dirty stuff. To linger at the line between life and death as the night changes into day, probably only a madman could come up with an idea like this, and only a madman would follow through with it. There were a few informational replies on the forum. Chen-gu gave them a cursory read, and similar to before, he did not reply. Instead, he logged out to start editing the video footage. He cut out his final struggle at the end of the video, and the product he ended up with was 63 seconds long. For short videos, the best were those that were shorter but had more shock value. However, Chen-gu went against the grain this time. He uploaded a video that was 63 seconds long and named it 1 Minute Holding Breath Challenge. After releasing the video, those who followed Chen-gu were notified, and some already commented without watching the video. Breath Holding Challenge. There's no scary video today. What is this? Even a drinking challenge would be more interesting than this. Is this some new challenge? I'm going to give it a try, too. It's all over, the host's talent has run out. What is that thing I saw lying beside the tub? Get out of my phone. 1 minute after the video was posted, Chen Ji's comments section exploded again. The shadow leaning against the tub 56 seconds in is a special effect, right? It seems to crawl up from underneath the tub. The person waving the cleavers in the video is the host himself. Someone get him an Oscar. If the black shadow had held on any longer, host wouldn't be with us anymore. I was trying to hold my breath as I started the video, but this thing popped up halfway. Run while you still can. The host only shares ghost videos. Run and don't look back. After staring at my phone for a full minute, I realized I am not going to sleep tonight. After your last video, I didn't dare look at the mirror anymore, and after this video, I won't dare take a bath alone anymore. Heartless host, taste this piledriver from me. Buying tickets to visit the haunted house and, on top of that, wanting to gift me local delicacies. The visitors today sure are nice. After Chingu exited the app, he felt much better. He stretched lazily once more and left the murder by midnight scenario, hugging the 5 dolls to his chest. The night soon passed, and dawn arrived. The sky outside the haunted house started to brighten. Chingu found several wooden planks from the props room. He nailed them entrance and the trap door that was connected to the murder by midnight scenario. Before he dealt with the mirror monster, he did not plan to use that scenario. 20 a ticket, and murder by midnight can fit 7 visitors at one time. If one run is counted as 15 minutes, I'll be able to gain a profit of 560 renminbi per hour. One day's work is 8 hours, so that translates to more than 4,000 renminbi. The thought squeezed Chen Ji's heart with pain, but he was not blinded by greed. Safety's first. There'll be more to earn after future scenarios are unlocked. After sealing up the scenario, Chen Gu returned to the staff break room. He placed the dolls beside his bed and changed into his running attire. The trial mission reminded Chen Gu of the fact that if not for his occasional training, he would have been buried under the ground then. Su Wan arrived for work at around 8:40 a.m. She was surprised to see Chen Gu around the corner with his head full of sweat. In her mind, her boss was not someone who was into exercising. The gate of the haunted house swung open, signifying the arrival of a new work day. The 2 workers stood at their assigned posts, ready to start the operation. At 9 a.m., the visitors started to enter the park, but the entrance of the haunted house was still quite empty. It was the most vacant spot of all the attractions inside New Century Park. Boss, what did you do inside the haunted house last night? Why are there water puddles all over the place? I was mopping the floor. Chen Gu gave a random excuse before adding, when you are acting as a ghost, remember to stay far away from any mirrors. Why? Chen Gu was about to explain it to her when he saw Uncle Su, the park manager, walking toward them. Uncle Su, is there a problem? Chen Gu removed the ear mic. He realized Uncle Su did not have a very pleased expression. You are just getting weirder by the days. Uncle Su studied Chen Gu up and down. Just now, the people from the canteen came to me to report that they are missing their cleavers. I was just wondering which thief would be so odd to only steal 2 cleavers. After looking at the surveillance, I have just one question to ask. Why weren't you asleep at night but snuck into the canteen to steal their cleavers? Is it that fun running around waving 2 cleavers? Uncle Su reminded Chen Gu that the cleavers he had taken from the canteen were still left inside the bathtub. I just helped the police solve an open case, right? But one of the killers is still missing, so the cleavers are for self-protection. Don't worry, I'll buy the canteen new cleavers tomorrow. Chen Gu had no clue whether blades that had touched a ghost before could still be used for culinary purposes, so he didn't think it was wise to return the cleavers to Uncle Su. It's getting harder and harder to understand you. Kid, tell me honestly. Are you involved in some illegal dealings behind my back? What kind of illegal dealings can I get into with 2 cleavers? I'm not doing anything criminal, Uncle Su, don't worry. Uncle Su was only half convinced. However, Since the park had just opened for the day, he had too many things to deal with to get into it with Chin-gu. He took a step closer to Chin-gu and pulled out a tightly wrapped plastic case from his pocket. Here is 5,000, if you have any trouble, please come to me. Uncle Sue, thank you so much. I'll return you the money this weekend. Just stop making trouble for me, that'll be more than enough repayment. After Uncle Sue left, Chin-gu shoved the money inside his shirt. He leaned against the gate, thinking about how to utilize this money. 5,000 should be just enough to install some cameras. However, the interior space of the haunted house is now all occupied. I'll need to expand before I can unlock new scenarios. Renting the underground parking lot is not a bad idea, but I wonder how much the management will charge me. Chin-gu had a mounting headache from the many problems he realized he was facing. The biggest problem I have is a lack of money. The reward money is still nowhere to be seen. Should I try to hurry them? He turned to look in the direction of the police station. When his gaze scanned a certain corner, his pupils narrowed, and his gaze centered on a curious visitor. The man was wearing a cap low on his head and a long-sleeved top with two hands stuck inside his pockets. He wandered between several attractions as if deciding which one he should try. That person looked so familiar. Due to yin-yang vision, Chen Ji's vision was better than most. The person probably did not know he had been exposed. Shall I go stop him? Just as Chin-gu was contemplating that, he had a group of visitors who wanted to visit the haunted house. He threw himself into work, and the suspicious visitor was thus tossed out of his mind. When Su-won and Chin-gu were about to go for their lunch break, he once again spotted the suspicious man loitering near the haunted house. The man hasn't come near the haunted house the whole morning, but he came over just as me and Su-won are planning to go for lunch. What is he up to? Chin-gu had Su-won leave first. He returned to the haunted house. When the visitor noticed his return, he turned around and left the park without even turning back. Have I seen him somewhere before? Chen Ji's eyelid twitched, a sign of a bad omen. Chin-gu decided to skip lunch and headed for the park security center. After getting the guard's permission, he went to search for this suspicious visitor's footage. It was quite obvious that the man was purposely avoiding the cameras. From his arrival to his departure, the man had kept his hands inside his pockets. Even when he stopped for a smoke break, he had only used one hand to light the cigarette that he kept dangled on his lips. However, the most suspicious part was that after paying for entry, he only rode one attraction. That was the Ferris wheel, and he rode it 3 times in a row. This person is definitely suspicious. Chen Ji's fingers slowly tightened as he linked the series of unusual actions together. Without saying a word, he pulled out his phone to call Inspector Lee's number at Western Zhejiang City's police station while standing in the security office. The phone rang twice before Inspector Lee's gravelly voice came through the line. Hello. Uncle San Bao, I need to report something to the police. 1. You'll need to call 110 for that. 2. My name is Inspector Lee. I found the last fugitive from Ping An Apartments. He was at New Century Park. When he heard that, Inspector Lee's voice changed. You sure? Yes, I am, but please don't come in your police car, you'll spook him, and he'll go on the run. Be there in 15 minutes. After ending the call, Chin-gu held the phone in his hand as he stared at the surveillance footage. The guards also realized something was wrong, and they hurried to call Uncle Sue. What's going on? After a while, Uncle Sue rushed over, sipping from his water bottle. Can I not have my lunch in peace? Xiao Chen, why are you here and not at your haunted house? He glanced at the surveillance footage. When he saw the phone in Chen Ji's hand, he asked cautiously, who were you on the phone with? The police. Chin-gu did not turn to look at Uncle Sue as his eyes jumped between the many surveillance cameras. They'll be here in another 15 minutes. Police, why didn't you discuss this with me first? Uncle Sue's voice went up a pitch. The park management has its own way of dealing with robberies, natural disaster. Uncle Sue. Chin-gu turned around to interrupt Uncle Sue. His eyes were incongruently calm and collected considering the words that fell out of his lips. Someone is trying to kill me. When he announced that, the security room became silent, and all the guards whipped their heads around to look at him. Chin-gu, have you been mentally affected from living inside the haunted house for too long? Uncle Sue did not call him Xiao Chen like usual but used Chin-gu, which he reserved for serious occasions only. What nonsense are you talking about in broad daylight? I helped the police solve the arson case at Ping An Apartments, but one of the murderers is still on the loose. Uncle Sue understood what Chin-gu was getting at then. You mean that person is now inside the park and is out for revenge? I thought he would escape the region to hide, but who would have thought the man was so courageous? Chin-gu pointed at the man on screen. This visitor is acting too strangely. His cap is too low, meaning he's trying to hide his face. Plus, today is not a cold day, but he's wearing a long-sleeve shirt, and he kept his hands inside his pocket throughout. Even when he was smoking or drinking water, he only used his right hand, and he kept his left hand firmly inside the pocket. That might be so, but none of that proves anything. Perhaps those are just his personal quirks. Uncle Sue put down the water bottle and walked to close the security room door. The fugitive's name is Zhang Peng, his build is exact same as that of the man on screen. Most importantly, there is the tattoo of a peony on the back of his hand. Peony. The flower of good fortune. The man is a down-on-his-luck gambler who has lost everything. Meaning he kept his left hand hidden because it would expose the tattoo. Uncle Sue was slowly convinced by Chin-ji's story. Could it be that the man has some weird skin disease that he doesn't want anyone to see? I have other proof. Chin-gu switched the video footage. After entering the park, he only visited one attraction, the Ferris wheel, and he went on it 3 times in a row. Do you know what that represents? What does that represent? Uncle Sue was slowly lagging behind. The Ferris wheel provides the best vantage point of the park. He was trying to find the best escape route for himself. Chin-gu slowed down the footage. When Su-won and I left the haunted house to go to the canteen, I saw him sneak toward the haunted house. You can see from the video footage that he wandered around the haunted house the whole morning but didn't approach it. He only did so after ensuring that Su-won and myself had left. This is definitely not the normal way a visitor would act. You're right. Uncle Sue nodded, convinced by Chin-ji's argument. But why would he go near the haunted house only when no one is there? Chin-gu tapped his fingers on the table. If I were in his shoes, planning to kill the owner of a haunted house, I would definitely stake out the place first to familiarize myself with the building's layout. Perhaps I could hide inside the haunted house and wait for the place to close for maintenance, then I could jump at my target without him anticipating my arrival. Furthermore, a haunted house is the perfect place to hide a body. If the blood stains are taken care of, when the body is discovered, it will most likely be the next day already. Uncle Sue got chills listening to Chin-ji's speculation. There was a scene forming in his mind. Already. Now that you mention it, it is quite scary. The scariest thing is that it almost happened. Chin-gu pulled his gaze back, and his balled fists slowly relaxed. Thankfully, he has acted too rashly. Plus, my senses have been maintained at an all-time high due to the many weird events that have been happening. That's the only reason I managed to spot him. Then, where is he now? Shall I alert the other visitors? Uncle Sue finally understood the gravity of the situation. He has already left the park after he was discovered. At the time, I still hadn't seen the footage, so I was not confident with my speculation, that's why I didn't stop him. You did well. If the suspect went berserk inside the park, it would have caused great chaos. Uncle Sue took a sip of the water and told the guards beside him, remember to cooperate with the police when they arrive later. 10 minutes later, the door to the security room was pushed open. 3 men in casual attire strode into the room, the one leading was Li Sanbao. "Where's Chungu? Let me see your surveillance footage." With the aid of the guards, Inspector Li compared the man in the video to the police station's database and finally managed to confirm the two were one and the same. "Kid, you've done society another great service." Inspector Li smacked Chungu on his back before pulling out his phone to contact the station to report on the situation. After some discussion, they decided to split into two teams. One was going to conduct a secret investigation while the other would surround New Century Park and observe from afar. Zhang Peng is an extremely dangerous individual. You have to be careful since you're being targeted. The probability of him coming back is very high, so I suggest you stay away from the haunted house for the time being. After hearing what Inspector Li had to say, all the guards felt uneasy. Chungu, however, was surprisingly unfazed. "If I'm not there, Xiao Wan alone won't be able to keep the haunted house open. If I close the haunted house, Zhang Peng will definitely know that gig is up, he'll go on the run then." "You mean, you're planning to stay at the haunted house as bait?" Inspector Li frowned slightly, thinking this plan was far too dangerous. "Don't worry, if he dares come inside my haunted house, I guarantee he won't be leaving anytime soon." "I'm afraid I cannot agree to that." Inspector Li shook his head. "Capturing a fugitive is the police's responsibility. How can we allow you to take this unnecessary risk? Staying behind at the haunted house is merely to create a false image for Zhang Peng to think he hasn't been exposed. This way, he'll follow through his plan to seek me out. When he returns to the park, you will be able to detain him," Chungu explained after much contemplation. "If we fail to catch him this time, I'll need to spend the rest of my life in fear, looking over my shoulder every moment, since he could strike at any given time. In any case, the actual plan will have to be decided only after we discuss it with the city's investigation team. The case at Ping An Apartments is their responsibility. We from the Western Station are merely providing assistance, but I will relay your request to them." Inspector Li packed up his laptop and made a call before leaving the security room with the two other officers. Uncle Su wandered over after the police left. He was worried about Chungu. "Xiao Chen, I think you should listen to the police and go find somewhere else other than the haunted house to stay for a few days. Hiding from the problem is not going to solve anything, but I appreciate the concern, Uncle Su." After taking another look at the surveillance, Chungu returned to the haunted house. Su Wan was leaning against the gate, and when she saw Chungu walk toward her from the security office, she pointed at the boxed rice left on the table. "Boss, today's menu is stir-fry green chili with pork and rice. When the canteen auntie wasn't paying attention, I added another scoop of meat for you." Chungu thanked Xiao Wan for the rice. He looked at the girl but decided not to reveal any information about Zhang Peng. He finished the rice with big mouthfuls and began the afternoon service. Su Wan acted as the ghost inside the Minghun scenario while Chungu stayed at the entrance to sell tickets. He kept his head low, but his eyes swept every corner of the park. Zhang Peng's appearance can be a curse or a blessing depending on how I use him. After completing several missions on the Black Phone, Chen Ji's logical thinking had improved tremendously, and his tolerance for stress had been given a power-up. There's a mirror monster hiding inside the haunted house currently. The thing can pass through the mirror world and reality freely. In other words, if there's a mirror, it is invincible. Chungu sold the ticket mechanically while his brain worked on overdrive to process the information. The attacks on He-san and He-Foam were very similar. Based on He-Feng's description, the monster's aim was to possess their body and swap out their consciousness. Temporarily, we have no idea what the purpose of that is, but one thing worth considering is, if the monster enters a person's body, does that mean that it won't be able to escape the body at least for a short period of time? Chungu had discovered this phenomenon when he conversed with He-Feng, but there was no danger-free method to test out this theory. He had prepared to give up on this idea, but then Zhang Peng had decided to show himself that morning. When he confirmed it was Zhang Peng on the camera, the plan had been settled in Chen Ji's mind. He planned to use Zhang Peng as bait. He had to figure out a way to lure Zhangpeng inside the haunted house and enable the mirror monster to possess his body. This way, he could kill two birds with one stone. It was also why he insisted on staying at the haunted house. This is the plan. It's dangerous, but if it's successful, I'll be able to remove two threats at once. At 5 p.m., Chen Guk called Su Wan out and let her leave early. He went back inside the haunted house to prepare various stuff for Zhangpeng. At 5:30 p.m., Chen Guk received a call from Inspector Li, telling him that the police had set up a perimeter around New Century Park. If Zhangpeng showed himself, he would definitely not get away. After dinner, Chen Guk carried Dr. Skullcracker's outfit and hammer as he entered the haunted house's main control room. He locked the door and sat before the monitors. If there was no accident, he was going to spend the whole night inside the room. There are indeed too few cameras. There are too many blind spots, so I mustn't let my guard down. The sun dipped below the horizon, and as daylight left, New Century Park felt weirdly eerie. Chen Guk wrapped the outfit around him as a cover as he sat inside the control room. At midnight, those who should not be there had arrived, but those who should have been there had not. Similar to the previous night, the sound of sawing came from the murder by midnight scenario. Is the creature taunting me? Chen Guk shrugged the outfit off and walked to the door, wondering if he should go meet the creature. I'll let it be for now. Putting back on the ear mic, Chen Guk hugged the doll left behind by his parents to his chest and returned to the surveillance monitor. At around 1 a.m., when Chen Guk was at the verge of giving up, he saw the door to the bathroom rattle on screen. Someone's there. He focused on the monitor, completely rejuvenated. Not long after, the door fell open a sliver and a lanky man wielding a 20-centimeter-long boning knife slipped through the opening. That bathroom is where I did my first nightmare mission. The window leads outside. He probably prepared some stepping stone beforehand and messed with the lock earlier. Chen Guk looked at the surveillance calmly. The door to the control room was still locked. The control room's location was well hidden, and those unfamiliar with the haunted house's layout would not be able to reach it anytime soon. On screen, Zhangpeng traveled down the corridor, holding the knife in one hand and his phone in another. He had no idea he was being watched as he focused on sidestepping the random stuff and unknown props that littered the corridor. After 15 minutes traversing the obstacle course, Zhangpeng finally reached the staff break room. He could be seen hesitating at the door. His chest rose and fell unevenly, and his hand that held the knife shivered. He reached out to push on the door multiple times, but every time, he pulled back just before his finger touched the door. It was obvious that he was caught in a conundrum. Zhangpeng dithered for about 20 seconds before he came to a decision. He did not even notice the camera that was looking at him. He raised the knife in one hand while the other grabbed the door knob. With a deep breath, he shoved the door open, and like a leopard pouncing on its prey, he jumped into the break room. 1 minute later, Zhangpeng came out carrying the knife. There was a bit of red on the blade. He seemed to have accidentally slashed his arm. He tossed the knife to his other hand. Zhangpeng's expression turned more grievous. He glanced at the stairs before picking up the pace as he went down the corridor. From the surveillance feed, Chen Guk could see Zhangpeng was heading toward the control room. Chen Guk messaged Inspector Li and held Dr. Skullcracker's hammer as he hid behind the door. He was about to surprise Zhangpeng with a horror movie classic The Scare behind the door, but Zhangpeng merely wandered past the control room's door before heading into the workers' passageway. What is this man up to? Chen Guk was confused by his opponent's actions. He hurried to the monitor and saw that Zhangpeng was using his knife to pry off the wooden planks that had sealed up the trap door at the end of passageway before heading in without a second thought. Why is he heading into the murder by midnight scenario? Chen Guk peeled off his ear mic as his eyes widened with shock. There have been sawing sounds coming out from the scenario. Does he think I'm sawing stuff inside? Chen Ji's features twisted as Zhangpeng's vicious and obstinate glare appeared in his mind. Two demons fighting each other. The sawing sound from the murder by midnight scenario did not stop due to Zhang Peng's entrance. The mirror monster probably did not anticipate that someone would rush in so blindly and rashly. I can't play it safe any longer. I have to see the mirror monster enter Zhang Peng's body with my own eyes before I can sleep easy at night. With a glance at the surveillance to pinpoint Zhang Peng's location, Chen-gu yanked out the chains from the Dr. Skullcracker outfit and dropped them to the floor before putting both the outfit and the skin mask on. He waved the iron hammer twice to get a feel for it, and a wicked energy radiated from Chen-gu. How come it feels like I'm the bad guy here? After grabbing his keys and phone, he shoved the dolls into his pocket, grabbed hold of the weirdly designed hammer, and headed out of the control room. Trapped inside the murder by midnight scenario, Zhang Peng felt the weight of the knife in his hand getting heavier. He had prepared for this day for a long time, but one could never prepare enough because accidents had already happened. It was already 1 a.m., and a normal person would be asleep already. Even if they were not, they would be resting in their bedroom. He was all sorts of excited when he saw the sign that pointed to the staff break room. It had taken him a long time before he managed to calm down. He had given himself plenty of pep talk, to arouse the hatred and resentment within himself before he gathered enough courage to blast through the door. As he did so, he had waved the knife fiendishly at the bed. He had been so caught in the motion that he did not notice he had slashed himself. The blade was tipped with blood, but there was no one inside the bed. The only blood stain on the ruined bedspread came from his arm. Other than resentment, there was now an additional stain of grievance. It fueled his murderous intent, eclipsing his rationality completely. Ruining Ping and apartments, sending Wan Er into jail. You despicable bastard, I swear I'll kill you if it's the last thing I do. The more Zhang Peng thought about it, the angrier he became. The sawing sound from upstairs was like flies, causing his emotions to rile up even more. He gripped his knife tightly as he wandered close to the source. To prevent being found out, he was extremely careful along the way. I'm close, the source is from this floor. Zhang Peng poked his head out from the stairs. He did not carry any light source with him. He kept his back to the wall as he entered the third-floor corridor. I say, this haunted house sure is creepy. The corridors are as complicated as a maze. After I kill him, even if I just drop his body inside a random room, it'll take at least half a month before he's discovered. His lips curled up into a cruel smirk. The sound is coming from in front. But what is the man up to, not sleeping so late at night but sawing stuff? Fixing some emergency props? Zhang Peng bent down. He used the long sleeves to cover his wound as he crawled forward with the point of the knife leading the way forward. At the end of the third-floor corridor, the entrance to the scenario, Zhang Peng saw a blurry black shadow. The shadow was standing in the middle of the door, holding something in his hand, scratching on the door. Weird, why didn't he turn on the lights? It was not until he was so close that Zhang Peng realized this incongruity. However, he did not dwell on it because his mind was soon swallowed up by the desire for revenge. The air seemed to have frozen around him. He slowly raised the knife above his shoulder. His body was as tense as a strung bow, and he charged forward to stab at the shadow. Go to hell. The full-speed sprint sent Zhang Peng and the knife crashing into the shadow. An excited smile had begun to appear on his face, but it only lasted for 0.2 seconds before it disappeared. The knife shot through the shadow directly. The inertia caused Zhang Peng to slam into the door headfirst, and he almost broke his waist from the impact. Zhang Peng was unable to accept this result. He climbed up from the floor in a hurry and waved the knife frantically around him. Where is he? Where is he? After his anger left him, a sensation that he had not experienced before started to grow within Zhang Peng's heart. I swear I saw a black shadow standing here. My eyes weren't mistaken. Zhang Peng no longer cared about hiding his tracks. He pulled out his phone to light up his surroundings. The door was crisscrossed with scratch marks, and several sharp mirror pieces littered the ground. This was all left behind by the dark shadow, so I was right, there was someone standing here earlier. So, where in the world did he go? Zhang Peng shivered from head to toe. His anger had been completely drenched as he looked fearfully down the darkened corridor that suddenly felt so eerie. A man can't just disappear from thin air, unless that wasn't a normal man. His Adam's apple wiggled, and the weak light from the phone could no longer bring him a sense of security. If anything, the weak light only heightened his fear, like there were monsters hiding in the corners where the light could not reach. The haunted house's owner isn't a living person. This haunted house is really haunted. Zhang Peng's forehead was covered in cold sweat. Even his hand that gripped the knife was soaked with sweat. Any thought of revenge and murder had completely left his mind. He dashed down the corridor hurriedly, all he had on his mind then was to escape this blasted place. In his hurry to escape, he did not notice the angle of the staircase door was different from how he had left it before. Revenge can be replanned after I leave this place. Holding his wounded arm, Zhang Peng jumped into the staircase, when a shadow flitted out from behind the door and assaulted him. The sound of bone cracking was crisp to the ear. Zhang Peng held his right arm that seemed to be dying, and his brain went into shutdown. Sorry, I missed. Chen Gu wandered out from behind the door. The creepy skin mask twisted with a display of myriad expressions as Chen Ji's lips moved. I was aiming for your shoulder blade. Chen Ji's tone was indifferent, like he was talking about the weather. Looking at Chen Gu, Zhang Peng felt like he was about to suffocate. Jesus, Buddha, Allah, someone please help me. Zhang Peng did try to resist, but when he saw the 40-centimeter-long hammer in Chen Ji's hands, his limbs refused to listen to his commands. The hammer is covered with blood, and the handle has the shape of a human spine. Are you that afraid people won't know that you're a mad murderer? Without giving his opponent much time to recover, Chen Gu picked up the hammer and swung it at Zhang Peng's leg. He needed someone who was completely defenseless to be the vessel for the mirror monster. Bang! The bars on the stairs curved from impact. Zhang Peng evaded the attack at the last minute. With one arm bleeding and another incapacitated, Zhang Peng had given up on resistance. He even dropped his knife as he ran down the stairs. You dare visit my haunted house with such lack of courage. Grabbing the iron hammer, Chen Gu gave chase after his prey as the two of them returned to the first floor. Zhang Peng shot out of the workers' passageway like a bullet, as blind as one too. The layout of the haunted house was complicated, and combined with the lack of lighting, several minutes later, he soon realized with a sinking heart that he was lost. Why are you stopping? Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you, I just want to do a small experiment on you. With both of his hands on the iron hammer, Chen Gu trailed behind Zhang Peng, slowly leading his prey into a dead end. Not going to harm me? The moment we met, you cracked my arm. That is what you called not going to harm me. Zhang Peng had lost his only weapon, his left arm was bleeding, his right arm was limp, hanging off his shoulder like a noodle. In that moment, he felt wronged, and the thought to call the police for help appeared in his mind. Listen to my advice, stop struggling and follow my orders, or you might need a wheelchair for the rest of your life. Chen Gu took deliberate steps toward Zhang Peng. He had no pity for the man, after all, Zhang Peng was there to kill him. If he had not discovered that sooner, he would have been dead already. Boss, does that sound like what a victim would say? I must have been jinxed. Zhang Peng was completely defenseless, so he ran down whatever open path he could find. That pair of legs sure know how to run. Chen Gu continued to chase after Zhang Peng. However, several steps later, a sawing noise appeared in Chen Ji's ears again as a black shadow shot out from the workers' passageway. The mirror monster must have understood what was really happening by then, it knew this was the perfect opportunity. Zhang Peng raced blindly around the first floor. When he turned a corner, he saw a figure of a man waving at him from the corner of his eyes. Perhaps he was too scared by Chen Gu because he ran toward that person without a second thought. Chen Gu, who followed behind Zhang Peng, saw this, and a chill ran down his spine. The figure was around the same build as Feng. It was the mirror monster. I want you to live, but you insist on dying. That's a real ghost. Chen Ji's warning fell on deaf ears. Zhang Peng had reached the end of the corridor, and with the guidance of the figure, he wandered into the bathroom. The mirrors in the first-floor bathroom are in pristine condition. Since it's leading Zhang Peng toward the bathroom, the monster is going to make its move soon. Chen Gu was feeling nervous since the crucial moment had arrived. He dashed to the bathroom and worked with the doorknob. It was then that he realized the door was locked. The development had strayed from his plan. The sudden appearance of the black shadow had ruined everything. It had managed to capture Zhang Peng before Chen Gu could detain the man. Ah! Several seconds later, an ear-splitting scream came out from behind the bathroom door. Then it was followed by the sound of stuff falling and crashing. Zhang Peng seemed to have stumbled across something really scary. What's going on in there? Chen Gu raised the hammer to crack down on the doorknob. The doorknob fell off, but the door still would not budge. Someone had used the cupboard to block the door from behind it. Unable to know what was happening inside the bathroom, Chen Gu was anxious as he swung the hammer repeatedly at the wooden door. Bang! 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 The loud noises could be heard even outside the haunted house. Chen Gu had depleted most of his energy before he managed to break the hollow wooden door. The cupboard behind it had started to budge to reveal an opening that was about half a palm wide. Looking through the opening, Chen Gu saw the black cloth that covered the mirror had fallen to the floor. Zhang Peng was staring at the mirror with his eyes unfocused, but the scariest thing was there was a large black shadow standing between him and the mirror. The black shadow was slowly morphing until it became almost like Zhang Peng. It took one step back to allow half of its body to melt into the mirror, and then the weirdest thing happened. The dazed Zhang Peng walked toward the mirror. He pressed his face against the surface of the mirror. His body and the black shadow were slowly merging. About 4 seconds later, a creepy grin appeared on Zhang Peng's blank face. He slowly turned around and made sure to hold Chen Ji's gaze through the door and the cupboard. He swiped some fresh blood off his arm and wrote down something on the surface of the mirror. Another 1 or 2 seconds later, spirit seemed to return to Zhang Peng's eyes. He shuddered visibly before jumping out the bathroom window and out of the haunted house. The mirror monster has escaped into Zhang Peng's body. But does that thing have such a deep resentment toward me? Could it be because I've ruined its plan multiple times? The mirror monster had assaulted both He-san and He-feng. Both times, it had been interrupted due to an external influence. That was probably why the monster harbored resentment toward the owner of the haunted house, Chen Gu. The door to the bathroom was still blocked, and it would stay blocked for quite some time. Chen Gu quickly rushed to the front door, but before he could get anywhere, he could hear Inspector Li's voice calling. Chen Gu! Hang in there! We're coming to get you! Following a loud bang, the haunted house's gate was pried off its hinges, and several officers streamed into the building. Seeing this, Chen Gu immediately tossed the iron hammer to the side and removed his outfit and mask. The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. Inspector Li was the first one to burst through the darkness. Seeing Chen Gu standing all alone in the corridor, he asked with concern, "Xiao Chen, are you hurt?" Chen Gu played into the skit as he staggered a step back and leaned, weakly, against the wall. He had his hand on his chest as he said, "I was shocked, but I wasn't hurt. Leave me be, go chase after Zhang Peng. I saw him jump out of the haunted house's bathroom window. Okay, leave the rest to us. Thank you for your help tonight. Don't mention it. To be able to help the law enforcement is my honor. What is a little risk or sacrifice? But you'd better not act so rashly anymore in the future. Just look at how dangerous it was tonight." Inspector Li's eyes were aglow with admiration and approval. He had his men chase after Zhang Peng while he stayed behind with Chen Gu inside the haunted house to examine the crime scene. He wandered into the staff break room first. When he saw the blood on the bed, he turned to Chingu with worry. "Xiao Chen, you're injured." "Let me see." "That isn't mine." Chingu also didn't know how to explain it. At the time, the room was dark. The suspect probably accidentally hurt himself. Inspector Lee nodded. He used his flashlight to examine the knife marks on the bed frame and bedsheet, and his expression darkened. "You're not wrong. A man who is not familiar with knife work would accidentally slash himself in extreme stressful situations." He counted the visible marks and concluded, 17 slashes in total. "This is more than enough to pin him with attempted murder. This is the best proof." Looking at the knife marks, Chingu also felt a chill run up his arms. Inspector Lee pulled on his gloves and signaled for Chingu to vacate the room. "Remember to not touch anything in this room. Later, people will come to take pictures to keep as evidence. Of course, I will provide my full cooperation." Chingu retreated out of the room and returned to where he had been earlier to hide the iron mallet before walking to the first-floor bathroom. He stood before the ruined door and wondered to himself, "If I'm not mistaken, Zhang Peng wrote something on the mirror, right?" After adjusting his position, Chingu finally managed to discern the blood message that was left on the mirror. It was another Arabic number 2. There was nothing scary about the number itself, but the fact that it was written in blood did up the scary factor slightly. "What does this number mean? After the black shadow left last night, I saw a 3 on the shattered mirror and now it has become 2, is there some kind of relationship between them? Why is the number decreasing?" Chingu was at a loss. Could they represent some kind of countdown? Looking at the drying blood stain, Chingu leaned against the door and started to contemplate. The mirror monster has already entered Zhang Peng's body, so there was no reason for it to leave this message behind unless it plans to come back for revenge. Chingu considered this possibility, but he couldn't confirm it. He knew too little about the other world and the mirror monster. Suppose the number continues to drop, what will happen when it reaches 0? A bad feeling rose within Chen Ji's heart as he paced around the entrance of the bathroom. Could the number be related to my life? When it reaches 0, my life will be over like those tropes in scary movies. Chingu stopped himself from overthinking. I suppose there's nothing else for me to do for now but wait for tomorrow night to arrive. If there's another number that appears around or within the haunted house, then I'll decide what to do. Chingu sighed deeply. All he ever wanted was to keep the haunted house his parents left for him alive, and if it was within his means, he hoped to improve it, but there just had to be these accidents that screwed with his plan. When he returned to the staff break room, several police cars had arrived outside the haunted house. The main city's investigation team had come to ask Chingu some questions and snap a few pictures of the crime scene before joining the others to pursue and capture Zhang Peng. Inspector Lee accompanied Chingu, but even when the sun climbed up over the horizon, there was still no news of Zhang Peng being captured. However, Inspector Lee promised Chingu multiple times that with the condition Zhang Peng was in, he would not be able to avoid capture for long, he would be caught within the next 24 hours. Honestly, Chingu was not that worried about Zhang Peng. He was feeling down because he was concerned about the number that had been left behind by the mirror monster. Inspector Lee thought that Chingu was reeling from trauma, so he consoled him as best he could before leaving with the other officers after daylight. Chingu was left alone in the haunted house. He opened the window to allow the morning draft to caress his face. "I'm the owner of a haunted house, the lord of ghosts and spirits so to speak, but how come I feel I am so pitiful?" The morning rays filtered into the room. The ragdoll left on the bed turned as if carried by the wind and fell underneath the bed. Chingu picked it up and poked it on its tummy. "The only specter who listens to me only knows how to act cute. In a real combat situation, I'll probably need to protect you." The ragdoll seemed to be unhappy with Chen Ji's evaluation of her. She tried to resist but could not do anything. The rewards from both nightmare missions were support skills. They are useful for the development of the haunted house but don't really help me personally much. Even though Chingu had no idea what the numbers meant, he refused to let himself be toyed with by some mysterious forces like that. Taking out the black phone, Chingu clicked through the app for a long time and realized his only trump card was the scary-looking red specter Zhanya. When he was at the wooden hut behind Ping Apartments, Zhanya had helped him once, tipping him to Wang Qi's presence. Technically, she had saved his life. However, during the nightmare mission, when the mirror monster tried to drown him in the bathtub, she had not appeared. This went to show how cavalier she was with Chen Ji's life. Completing her bloody heart mission will enable me to get her to do something that is not against her will. Maybe I'll be able to get her to help me deal with the imminent danger. Chingu clicked on Zhanya's name, and even his courage that had been cultivated from a young age started to waver as he looked at the bloody red interface. But this lady likes a dead Chingu. What if the affection level rises too fast and she can't wait for me to join her in the afterlife? Not everyone could accept a specter's admiration that easily. After exiting the app, even the air around Chingu felt fresher. The bloody heart mission will be my final resort. If the mysterious number appears one more time tonight, I'll have to complete the bloody heart mission. After making that decision, with a plan forming in his mind, Chingu fell back to sleep. Su Wan came to work at around 8 a.m. Chingu left the haunted house in her capable hands while he went to purchase the surveillance cameras with Uncle Su's money. He was in such a hurry because there were too many blind spots around the haunted house, it was too dangerous. On top of that, one of the black phone's daily missions was for him to install surveillance cameras and security devices. After the purchase was made, Chingu had the workers come to the haunted house that afternoon to install the devices. With him personally watching, the few workers installed the cameras in most corners of the haunted house with their hearts shaking, forming a surveillance web that had few blind spots. Even though Chingu planned to purchase listening device as well, due to limited funds, he only got the cheapest one and had it installed inside the Minghun scenario. At 7 p.m., after the final testing was done, Chingu received the mission success alert on the black phone. Congratulations for completing the easy mission, reward earned background music, wedding dress. Note, wedding dress is the perfect accompaniment to Minghun. The Minghun scenario's scream factor has been upgraded to 1 star. Chingu was surprised when he saw the phone alert. The original scream factor for Minghun was only 0.5 stars, but with this new music, it was upgraded to 1 star. Looks like this music is even more disturbing than Black Friday. Wanting to immediately try it out, Chingu played the music. It was a completely different style from Black Friday. One was a slow insidious burn, like a force slowly dragging the listener into the dark abyss. The other was weirder in nature, a mix of wedding music and funeral music. The new track caused Chen Ji's skin to crawl from the first note alone. It does fit the Minghun scenario perfectly, but constant exposure to it will probably cause unwanted psychological trauma. Unless someone comes to challenge the haunted house, I'd better keep it to myself for now. Chingu saved wedding dress to his own phone before returning to the 3rd floor alone to clean up the place. He did not have enough funds to hire cleaners, so with the dolls snuggled in his pockets, he cleared out all the mirror pieces he could find on the 3rd floor. When he was done, it was almost midnight. Chingu held his phone as he wandered between the bathroom and the staff break room. He looked at the mirrors carefully as he waited for midnight to arrive. With dark circles under his eyes, Chingu stood before the mirror hugging the dolls. 1 more minute until midnight. The lights in the bathroom were off, and Chingu stared at his reflection in the mirror. Afraid that he might miss out on some details, Chingu did not dare to blink with his palms on the sink and his face close to the mirror. He focused all of his attention on the mirror. When there were only several seconds away to midnight, the phone in Chen Ji's pocket vibrated. A call. Who would call at such a time? The sudden phone call startled Chingu. He hurriedly pulled out his phone and the caller ID was Inspector Lee. Has there been some kind of accident? Chingu answered the call and put the phone beside his ear. Uncle San Bao, have you got an update? On the other end of the phone, Inspector Li sounded serious and hurried. Zhang Peng is still on the loose, but we've come to the conclusion that he's still around western Zhejiang. You have to be careful. The man is incredibly dangerous and cunning. His actions and thinking are different from normal, and we cannot rule out the possibility that he will return for you. But didn't the police set up a perimeter around New Century Park yesterday? With injuries on both of his arms, he shouldn't have been able to get far. From Chen Jiyi's perspective, he had been sure Zhang Peng was going to be captured. There was an unexpected development. For now, I cannot give you the details, but what I can say is, last night, one of the officers who managed to intercept the suspect experienced some kind of trauma. He's currently in a deep coma and being looked after at the hospital. What? Chen Jiyi's expression shifted, and he was about to say something when he glanced at the mirror on the wall out of the corner of his eye. A bloody Arabic number of 1 had surfaced on the mirror when he was not paying attention. But don't worry, the police are closing in on him. Justice always prevails. Inspector Li continued to talk on the phone, but Chen Jiyi's mind was already elsewhere. He placed the phone down and looked at the mirror dumbly. When did this appear? The mirror monster has already left, so why would the number still appear on the mirror? Chen Gu was reminded of what he had seen in the bathroom the day before, where half of the mirror monster's body was outside the mirror and Zhang Peng had voluntarily walked forward to merge himself with the creature. What does this number really mean? Yesterday it was 2, and today it is 1. Does this mean it'll become 0 tomorrow? The dropping number caused Chen Jiyi's eyes to dim with concern. After Zhang Peng was possessed by the mirror monster, the number started to drop. When Inspector Li mentioned the coma of the officer, the number dropped again. Does the number represent the number of victims? The mirror monster needs 3 living victims. Regardless of the real meaning of the number, Chen Gu could not wait anymore because it was now related to innocent lives. A great sense of urgency appeared in his heart. The mirror monster is growing stronger and stronger, tomorrow night might be my last chance already. Chen Gu picked up a dirty cloth to wipe the number on the mirror away, he could not play it safe anymore. After a few more words with Inspector Li, he ended the call and then entered the props room with the black phone. It is now a new day, the daily missions will have refreshed already. Now, the only thing that might help me are the Red Spectre's Bloody Heart mission or the new Nightmare mission. Chen Gu tapped into the daily mission interface of the app. Easy mission, a normal haunted house experience should not create permanent trauma to its visitors. I hope you understand this simple theory. Please improve the haunted house's security by inspecting the security threats hidden around the haunted house. Normal mission, you've achieved the criteria to enable the first expansion of the haunted house, do search for a suitable location soon. Due to space limitations, you are unable to perform any trial mission to unlock scenarios. Nightmare mission, there has always been a second occupant inside your room, wouldn't you like to meet said person? Beware. The more difficult the mission, the more dangerous it'll be, so please choose carefully. After reading all 3 missions, Chen Jiyi's eyes fell on the Nightmare mission, the other person inside my room. Just the description of it makes me uncomfortable. Chen Gu knew the possible danger of the Nightmare mission perfectly well. After a long hesitation, he chose to open the Red Spectre's page instead. Are you sure you want to accept Zhang Ye's Bloody Heart mission? Warning. This mission contains a certain level of danger. The app kindly provided Chen Gu with a warning. He rubbed his temples, unable to come to a decision. Both of these missions have a certain degree of risk and danger. However, the rewards of the Nightmare mission are random, there's a high chance it might just give me another supportive skill. In comparison, the Bloody Heart mission Zhang Ye has been given the special title of Red Spectre and even her own personal page on the app. This means that she is probably a powerful spectre, at least several levels higher than the mirror monster. With her help, I should be able to survive this crisis. After thorough analysis, with a grit of his teeth, Chen Gu clicked on Zhang Ye's Bloody Heart mission. Are you sure you want to accept Zhang Ye's Bloody Heart mission? Yes. The red interface started to change and peel off like wilting roses, and soon, a new message appeared on screen. Andersen's Fairy Tales Volume 1, Book 3 Red Dancing Shoes. Once upon a time, there was a pair of ruby red dancing shoes that could make the dancer who wore them light on her feet and perfect at her dance. However, none of the dancers dared put them on because they were a pair of magical shoes, one that would make its dancer keep on dancing until they perished from exhaustion. Please arrive at Western Zhejiang's private academy within 1 hour from accepting the mission and locate Zhanya's red dancing shoes before dawn. Warning, don't be late on your first date, or she'll be very unhappy. Chenggu did not know what to feel after reading the mission details. The private academy had been abandoned several years earlier due to unknown reasons. However, Chenggu had heard plenty of scary rumors about it. My first date with a girl is at an abandoned school after midnight, am I that unlucky at love? The mission required him to be at the private academy within 1 hour. Chenggu calculated the distance in his mind, and realized he still have some time left. The private academy is at this part of town, so not that far away from me. The biggest issue is going there after midnight. Sigh, I'd better go take a bath first, no matter what. This is my first time. After a quick shower, Chenggu changed into a clean outfit. He stood before the mirror to inspect his image. There are 50 minutes left, why am I feeling so nervous all of a sudden? After taking a few deep breaths and splashing cold water on his face, Chenggu finally calmed down. It's time to go. Chenggu retrieved the backpack that he had used last time and placed Zhanya's love letter, a power bank, and tool mallet into it. After the lesson from last time, he put the penknife directly in his pocket and the doll left behind by his parents inside his shirt pocket. He was bulging all over the place, but at least he felt safer. After packing everything he needed, Chenggu locked the haunted house and rushed out of New Century Park. It was 12:15 a.m., so there was little traffic on the road. He waited for another 10 minutes before he managed to hail a cab. Sir, please get me to Western Zhejiang's private academy. I'm in a hurry, so please drive faster. No problem, get in. The driver was an easygoing middle-aged uncle, and the radio in the car was playing hit songs from the 90s. Chenggu sat in the back seat and used this downtime to search for online information related to his current mission. The first thing mentioned by the phone when he accepted the Bloody Heart mission was Andersen's red dancing shoes, so that was the first thing Chenggu looked for on the internet. He managed to find the original source, and after skimming through it, Chenggu felt rather petrified. The original plot was not much different from the Black Phone's version. It described the story of a young girl who was gifted a pair of beautiful red dancing shoes. She loved them so much that she wore them everywhere, including to church, where she was cursed to dance forever. She was afraid, helpless, and exhausted. In the end, she begged the woodman to chop her legs off, and then came the most curious part of the fairy tale. After the legs were chopped off, they danced away into the forest still wearing the red dancing shoes. Is this even a fairy tale? It added to his nervousness since his mission was searching for Zhanya's red dancing shoes. When I won the cursed love letter, the Black Phone did provide a brief description of Zhanya. She was wearing a bloodied school uniform and red dancing shoes at the time of her death, so could the fairy tale be real? The red dancing shoes couldn't be taken off after they were put on. Chen Ji's skin crawled. Different from his previous missions, this time he was going face to face with a red specter, one that had a bloody heart mission, something that could only be given by specters with heavy resentment. Looks like the key to tonight's mission is the red dancing shoes. Chenggu read the fairy tale again for a few times. The main lesson to be learned here was to not be vain but be humble at all time. Was there even a reason for the Black Phone to refer to this fairy tale at the start of the mission? He could not figure out an answer, so he decided to focus his energy on searches related to Western Zhejiang's private academy. The school was closed after just 2 years of operation and had been abandoned since then. With regards to the reason for its closure, there were plenty of rumors online. Some said it had to do with lack of budget, whereas others complained about the high semester fees. Chingu scrolled through all the information patiently, and Zhanya's name did not even appear once, like she had nothing to do with the school at all. There has to be something more sinister about the closure than what's been speculated online. Chingu looked at the streetlights out the window that seemed to be running backwards, and he squinted his eyes in thought. Just what kind of ending could a girl experience to turn her into a red specter? Why would she harbor such deep resentment? What does all of that have to do with red dancing shoes? While Chingu was deep in his thought, the volume of the radio picked up. He turned toward the source with shock and realized the driver uncle had been looking at him via the rearview mirror. "What's on your mind, young man? You have such a sad face." The driver was a quintessential chatterbox. He had attempted to start a conversation with Chingu when Chingu entered the car, but Chingu had ignored the man mostly because he was busy looking up information. "So much has changed in my life recently that I'm struggling to get my head around it, feeling rather swamped at the moment." Chingu smiled politely as he put his phone away. "Slow and steady wins the race. I'm sure everything will work out in the end. If you're that stressed, do what I do, play some disco music, and after a few shakes, you'll feel much better." The driver grooved along to the music. At least the man is optimistic, thought Chingu. "By the way, why are you going to the private academy so late at night? That place is mostly abandoned, and it's not close to any residential area." Chinji's lips fell open and eventually he answered, "Going on a date." "A date? At this kind of ungodly hour?" The driver glanced back at Chingu. "It's true. I don't know how to explain it, the girl is a bit hard to please and has some weird quirks." Chingu tried to normalize it as best as he could. After all, he had not been asked out on a date before, and being invited to one did make him feel quite good about himself. "That's a good thing. What are you worried about? Worried that she won't like you? Then again, what kind of person goes to a date dressed like you? Listen to me, even guys need to know how to dress these days. Look at that backpack, it goes against the rest of your outfit." The floodgate of the driver's mouth had been opened, and Chingu did not even know how to respond. A normal person going on a date would have been happy and overjoyed, but his date was more like a coercion and a desperate move to save himself than an actual date. A gentleman mustn't be too forward, don't start the conversation with random topics like the weather, compliment her, and be a good listener. After all, the first impression is very important. Listening to the driver's advice, Chingu had half a mind to play wedding dress on his phone so that everyone could have a little peace and quiet. The taxi zoomed through the night. The cars on the road and the buildings beside it had gotten increasingly sparse, even the streetlights had started to disappear. The signs of civilization outside the window started to disappear, and the road was slowly swallowed up by the forest. The driver glanced at the GPS and asked Chingu, "Are you sure you got the right address? Other than an abandoned school, there's nothing down the road." "Yes, I'm sure, just drop me off near the school." "How much?" 19, do you mind paying me via WeChat? I just started my shift, and I don't have spare change on me." "No problem." As Chingu grabbed his phone out of his pocket, the penknife bounced out of it as well. The knife sat quietly on the cushion, causing the driver who spotted it to lean surreptitiously forward. The driver moved his hand to lower the volume of the radio. As he did so, he stealthily used his pinky finger to press a button on the machine. None of this escaped Chinji's eyes. However, there was nothing he could do but continue to smile. He believed the uncle had mistaken him for some kind of late-night burglar. Transaction successful. Chingu put away his phone and glanced at the driver's seat. "Uncle, you're recording this to report to the police?" The driver, who was in the middle of drinking from a bottle of water, coughed violently as he waved his hands about vehemently. "I can understand why you're doing that, but..." Chingu turned to look at the eerie outline of the school in the dark. "I'm really here for a date." The driver's face was pale, and he laughed awkwardly. Then, Good luck to you. Thank you, so do you mind stopping the recording now? Chen-gu flashed a smile that he thought was friendly. This is just a misunderstanding. Of course, the driver answered readily. He pressed some random button on the machine. After driving for another 2 or 3 meters, the red light on the driver's walkie-talkie lit up. He pressed it lightly, and before he could say anything, a rough, gravelly voice appeared. Lao Lu, you're also near Western Zhejiang's private academy. What is wrong with people tonight? I also have a passenger with me who wants to go there. Actually, we're quite close. By the way, what is this message that you sent to the group? I am mailed postage. It's nothing, just focus on your passenger. The driver swiped the sweat on his forehead away and quickly hung up on the walkie-talkie. That should be I am held hostage, right? Uncle, didn't you say you trust me? Chen-gu asked with his eyebrow raised. Afraid that the driver uncle might just call the cops on him, he said, you can drop me right here. Yes. The driver was quick to follow his instruction. Chen-gu even managed to see that the man's legs were shaking. Chen-gu looked around to make sure he did not leave behind anything. After he got out and closed the door, he looked up and saw the running sign on top of the taxi say, I am being held hostage, please call the police. Uncle, you sure are creative. The taxi left Chen-gu like it had grown wings. Several seconds later, the several hundred meters around Chen-gu fell silent. It was a starless night like it was going to rain soon. The rain clouds were hanging low in the sky, blocking out all light. Chen-gu pulled out his phone to look at the time. There were still 8 minutes left until the designated time. Just now, inside the car, the person on the walkie-talkie said he's also bringing a passenger to the private academy. That person is coming here at 1 a.m., could it have something to do with me? Chen-gu reminded himself to be careful. If not for the time limitation, he probably would have hidden himself in the brush by the side of the road to see who was following him. Only 8 minutes left. I'd better go familiarize myself with the layout of the school first. I'll need all the advantages I can get. The area surrounding Western Zhejiang's private academy was a piece of deserted land. There were no streetlights, only a single road cutting through heavy forest and shrubbery. Flipping on the flashlight on his phone, Chen-gu followed the road for another 100 meters before reaching the abandoned school's front gate. The chains and the iron bars had already rusted together. The gate was too heavy to even budge. Looking through the bars, all Chen-gu could see was darkness. How do I get in? Chen-gu paced around the gate. He tossed his backpack over the gate first before taking several steps back. With a running start, he grabbed hold of the bricks on the wall as he jumped over the outside wall. The school compound was not big, the whole area could be seen with one glance. There were several tall silhouettes standing in the dark like solitary watchmen. The school's sign had long since been removed. Chen-gu himself did not know what the real name of the school was. Like everyone else in the city, he only knew it as Western Zhejiang's private academy. The overgrown shrubbery had swallowed up most of the path. It scratched Chen-ji's legs at every step, making him feel both ticklish and painful. I've managed to arrive within the designated time limit, now my mission is to find Zhang Ye's red dancing shoes. Chen-gu pulled out the mallet from his backpack. Feeling the icy metallic touch on his skin, Chen-gu felt much safer. Using his phone as guidance, Chen-gu walked deeper into the school. He only took several steps before he felt something was wrong. He stopped moving and took several steps back. Is it my imagination? How come it feels like there is something pushing me into the school? And when I tried to walk backwards, there was a mysterious force blocking me from behind. Chen-gu turned to look over his shoulder, but there was nothing there. He used the phone to shower some light behind him, and there was nothing like ghost or spirit as he has imagined. Could it be that she's already here? Standing behind me? Only I can't see her. Chen-gu shivered. The thought of swinging the mallet at the space behind him cropped up in his mind, but he thought, what if Zhanya is really behind me and this swing angers her? He was a mere haunted house owner, he was practically defenseless, stranded in this deserted school. He shuddered, thinking about the ending should he manage to anger a baleful specter. In any case, I should go in first. Chen-gu pulled his backpack higher as he walked into the school holding up his phone and the mallet. The night darkened, and a draft picked up, it even carried a light dusting of rain with it. The most probable locations where I will find the red dancing shoes are either the female changing room at the dance studio or Zhanya's former bedroom. I'll have to focus on these two locations. Chen-gu headed toward the building that was closest to him. The trees inside the school had grown into twisted shapes, and the wild grass had grown up to Chen Ji's waist. There were statues that littered the school compound, and most of them were human figures. All in all, the place radiated an air of eeriness in the dark. The girls' dormitory. The dormitory building was not tall, only 4 stories high. However, it did look creepy, probably due to an extended period of abandonment. The glass door of the building was locked up tight using a metal chain. Chen-gu leaned against the glass to take a closer look. The doors on both sides of the dark corridor were tightly closed, but curious enough, a solitary chair sat in the middle of the corridor facing away from the bedroom door. A single chair is left right in the middle of the corridor. Is there some special meaning to this? Chen-gu leaned back from the glass door. Both the main gate and the hostel entrance have been locked, and the corridor doesn't seem to have any trash in it. This goes to show that when they were closing the school, they cleaned the place up first, so why did they leave a chair right in the middle of the corridor? Just a mere coincidence. If the chair was purposely left behind by the school management, then what is the meaning of it? If it was not left behind by the school, then who moved the chair to the middle of the corridor after the place was locked up? Chen-gu aimed his phone at the glass door. The chair was placed around 5 meters away from the entrance, and there was a broken hall light right above it. The light is already broken, and the electrical wiring is even exposed. Chair and wiring, is it me or that looks like a hanging scene? Honestly, after seeing this curious scene, Chen Ji's heart had started to palpitate. I'm probably just overthinking. He looked left and right. The breeze caused the leaves to rustle. The school after dark was hauntingly creepy. I can't scare myself for no reason. After all, Zhanya, the Red Spectre, is the scariest presence at this school. I have her love letter, so who dares to challenge me? Considering the situation, this was the only way Chen-gu could console himself. Furthermore, this is just an affection mission. To put it simply, it's a special kind of date. There's nothing to be worried about. He gave himself a pep talk, and when he was done, he walked back toward the glass door with the mallet. He was about to smash the door when his eyes caught a shocking detail. The chair that should have been right under the hall light had moved 1 meter away from the light fixture. It seemed to have moved forward. This was the first time Chen-gu experienced something like this. What just happened? Staring right at the wooden chair in the middle of the corridor, Chen-gu stood at the ready, gripping the mallet tightly. He waited for 10 seconds, and the chair remained unmoved. Is it because I'm watching it? Chen-gu walked forward and turned on his phone's recording function before cradling it within the chains on the door. Then, he walked back to the abandoned garden outside the building and waited patiently. The school at midnight was unsettlingly quiet, there was not even the sound of a bird or insect chirping. About 3 minutes later, Chen-gu returned to the dormitory. He had prepared himself for the worst. However, when he stood at the glass door, he saw that the chair was still where it was, just 1 meter away from the broken hall light. Didn't move. What's going on? Chen-gu walked to the door and picked up the phone from the chain. He looked through the video and saw nothing out of the ordinary. The chair sat in the middle of the corridor just as it should. It'll only move when it's around a living human. When the thought appeared in his mind, Chen-gu instantly felt something was wrong. He turned to look down the corridor, and the chair had moved 2 meters ahead again. It was now incredibly close to the glass door. It moved forward again. What does that mean? It only moves when I am close. Does this mean it wants something from me? It would have been a lie to say he was not afraid, but Chen Ji's tolerance for fear was much higher than most, so he managed to maintain a clear mind under such situation. The school is clearly haunted, but before I understand why, I should try my best to avoid these things. Chen Gu actually wanted to smash the glass door and rushed in to bash the chair into pieces. However, considering the blind spots inside the building, he was afraid there were threats hidden in corners that he could not see. He was afraid that after entering the building, it was not the chair that would snap but himself. Tonight's main mission is to locate that pair of red dancing shoes. As long as this weird stuff doesn't interrupt with my progress, there's no reason for me to interact with it. Chen Gu grabbed his phone and retreated from the door. I'd better go investigate other places first. I can always return if I can't find the dancing shoes. After all, the mission is considered successful as long as I locate them before sunrise. There is still plenty of time. Chen Gu committed the location of the girls' dormitory to memory before retracing his step back to the school gate. He switched his phone off and squatted near the main gate, holding the mallet in his hand. Based on the time, the taxi behind me should have arrived already, so why is the road still so dark? A car's headlights would be extremely eye-catching against the total darkness, but Chen Gu waited for a long time without seeing any source of light heading toward the school. Could there have been an accident? This detail had not left his mind. Chen Gu knew there was no such thing as coincidence in this world. The person who followed him to Western Zhejiang's private academy had some motive of their own. The opponent probably knew that I would wait for them, so they came out from the car earlier and walked the rest of the way on foot? If that's the case, then this is troublesome. Chen Gu wished that he was wrong. He already had more than enough on his plate as it was. In any case, I'll need to pick up pace. I have two advantages on my side. I've familiarized myself with the surroundings since I got here first, and I have Zhangya on my side. She won't watch me get bullied on her home turf, right? Perhaps Qin Ji's eyes had gotten used to the darkness, or maybe it was the effect of the yin-yang vision, but things were no longer that blurry in the dark. Those in the light opened themselves to being hunted by those in the dark. Chen Gu did not turn on his phone but headed toward another building in the dark. The tallest building in the school was the education building. It was 5 stories tall, and behind it was a field that was unkempt and overgrown. On the other end of the field was a building that sat itself apart from other buildings. The building stood out because it had faded red paint. The education building is for classes, so the dancing shoes won't be there. The possibility is even lower for the boys' dormitory. I'd better go take a look at the red building then. Chen Gu walked along the outer perimeter of the field before he reached the front door of the curious building. The building was as tall as the girls' dormitory, but it was only 2/3 the size. Once he got close, Chen Gu noticed how truly unusual this building was. There was a wooden sign that was placed before the front door, and 2 conspicuous words were painted on it with red ink and no entry. What is the purpose of this building? Curiosity is part of human nature. Chen Ji's desire to enter the building only rose after reading the warning sign. Something must have happened here several years ago. Maybe the red dancing shoes I'm looking for are inside. Chen Gu walked around the wooden sign and saw the front door was sealed up with 2 locks. I could break the door down with the mallet, but it'll create too much commotion. That might attract the attention of the person who is following me. Chen Gu thus shied away from the door and walked around the edge of the building. There, he saw a window that was seriously worn. Even a large piece of the glass was missing. This can be my point of entry. Chen Gu extended his hand through the window to open the lock from within. To play it safe, he waited for several minutes to ensure that no one was inside before he jumped in. He closed the window and moved everything to how it was before. Chen Gu did not dare lower his guard as he surveyed his surroundings. He had landed himself in an artist's studio. The walls were pasted with the students' handiwork, and marble models sat on the shelves. This place does look creepy, but it is no competition for my haunted house. Chin-gu walked through the rows of marble models as he headed for the room's back door. He looked through the door's window and saw a banner with the words Arts Activities Center, hanging on the corridor. Looks like I'm at the right place. Chin-gu pulled the door open slowly. Perhaps because it had not been used for a long time, the sound of the door sliding on its hinges was grating on Chin-ji's ears. Calm down, just leave immediately after you find the shoes. Since he was inside an enclosed building, Chin-gu switched on his phone again. The dim light did not bring him any comfort. If anything, it only heightened the fear in Chin-ji's heart. Chin-gu looked through the first-floor rooms one by one. All of them were artist studios. In fact, some of them still had easels and paintings that had been left behind. This building has 4 stories, the dance studio I'm looking for is probably on another floor. Armed with his phone and the mallet, Chin-gu headed up the stairs. When he reached the second floor, his heart started to race, and his back was covered with chills. Because as he turned to look down the corridor of the second floor, there sat a wooden chair. This thing again. The muscles in Chin-ji's hand grew taut, as he gripped the mallet even tighter. The chair was placed right in the middle of the corridor, so if Chin-gu wanted to enter the second floor, he had to walk past it. The memory of what he had seen at the girls' dormitory was still fresh in Chin-ji's mind. These chairs seemed to have the tendency to get close to living humans. Hiding at the staircase, he started to hesitate. It has a back for people to lean on, and it looks different from all the other chairs I've seen in this building. It seems to have been moved here from someplace else, but why would someone do that? Upon closer inspection, the chair looked similar to the one Chin-gu had seen inside the girls' dormitory. It was likely one of the chairs the school management assigned to the dormitory rooms. Chin-gu used the camera on his phone to zoom in on the sign on one of the doors. It said something related to vocal training. The dance studio is not on the second floor, it seems should I just head to the third floor? But what if there's another wooden chair on the third floor's corridor? If it starts to chase after me, won't I be blocked from both sides? As the creepy image flashed across his mind, Chin-gu decided to enter the second floor corridor. The corridor was so shadowy that Chin-gu could not see the end. The doors on both sides were closed, and the windows were crusted with a thick layer of dust, blocking Chin-gu of the view inside. Chin-gu took deliberate steps. He did not think to hurry simply because of the possible threat from the wooden chair. In fact, for Chin-gu, the abandoned classrooms on both sides seemed scarier than the chair. I wonder how long it has been since a living soul stepped into this place. The dust on the floor is so thick, and I have no way of dealing with the footprints that I've left. If the person following me has also entered this building, I'll definitely be discovered. Even in this situation, Chin-gu did not forget about the hidden threat of the third party. I have get this over with as soon as possible. The light on Chin-ji's phone wavered as his arms moved. He inched closer to the wooden chair. In reality, there's nothing really scary about this, right? What can a wooden chair really do? Chin-gu walked around the chair, and it gave him the feeling that it was just a wooden chair and nothing more. Maybe I should take a closer look at it. As the thought cropped up in Chin-ji's mind, he had already put it into motion. He knocked the chair to its side, and it was then that he noticed the handwriting underneath the chair. Qian Yujiao. That sounds like the name of a girl. In any case, the appearance of the name confirmed Chin-ji's earlier suspicion. The chair wasn't native to the activities center but belonged to a specific individual. When the school hosted large events, the management would have the students bring their own chairs. To prevent confusion, many would jot down their name underneath their chair. Does this mean there's also a name underneath the chair in the girls' dormitory? Chin-gu memorized the name. After some hesitation, he decided not to break the chair but placed it inside one of the empty classrooms. The longer I stay here, the more uncomfortable I feel. I'd better head up to the third floor soon. He returned via the route that he had come from and climbed up the stairs to the third floor. The corridor was empty this time. Chin-gu pushed open the door for some of the classrooms. The tables and chairs were all pushed to the back of the room, and parts of the wall had been repainted. It was rather obvious because the wall had two different hues. The school was already closing, so why did they waste money to repaint the wall? For whom is this for? Chen Ji's experience at Ping and Apartments provided him with a possibility that it's probably to hide something. He used the mallet to peel at the paint, but weirdly enough, the wall behind the new paint was completely normal. There were no blood stains or weird marks. No, there has to be something more than this. Chen-gu continued his tour of the classrooms. He realized that not all the classrooms had been coated with new paint. There were spots that had been repainted, and some of them were curiously close to the indoor piping. This building's water drainage system was probably updated before its closure. Chen-gu looked up at the piping and concluded, the classrooms on the first and second floor showed obvious signs of usage, but the classrooms on the third floor seemed to have been abandoned even before the closure. The tables and chairs were piled on top of each other, and there was not one piece of chalk left on the lectern. Some of the classrooms even had locks on them. Ghost haunting? Murder? Hidden security concern? There could be many different reasons for the sealing of the place, and Chen-gu could not pinpoint which one it was. He exited the classroom and headed up the fourth floor. When he took the first step, Chen-gu turned back to see whether the wooden chair was following him or not. It wasn't. When he reached the landing between the third and fourth floor, there was a rope tied across the two banisters of the stair that blocked his way. There was a wooden board hanging on it. Similar to the one at the front door, it said "No entry." Naturally, Chen-gu was not deterred by the wooden sign. He picked it up and put it to the side before bending down to scurry under the rope. As he reached the fourth floor, Chen-gu noticed with his first glance that a faded room sign was hanging on the door of the room right opposite from him. The dance studio. After such a long search at the activity center, he had finally located the venue where the red dancing shoes had the highest chance of appearing. The layout of the fourth floor was different from the other floors in the sense that instead of individual classroom, the walls had been knocked out to form a large studio. After tearing down the seals and prying open the lock, Chen-gu pushed open the door to the dance studio that had been left unused for many years. The place appeared to have been forgotten by time. Things seemed to be how they were several years ago. The slick floor was filled with a thin coat of dust, and the room was suffused with a weird smell. The closest description Chen-gu had for the smell was heavy deodorant that had gone off after being trapped in an enclosed room for years. Chen-gu walked into the studio, sticking close to the wall. The studio was at a professional level. The wooden floor was waxed to accommodate the dance practice, and the walls were equipped with acoustic boards and panels to prevent the noise from disturbing the other classrooms. This is the first time I've seen such a large dance studio. Chen-gu used his camera to zoom in on the various angles of the room. The walls were mounted with bars that one usually saw in ballet classes. The bar's height was adjustable, and underneath them were a row of low seats that students could use for rest. On the other end of the room were 6 floor-length mirrors that were perfectly joined together. Each mirror was about 1 meter wide and 2 meters tall. I'd almost forgotten that mirrors are a necessary fixture inside a dance studio. Looking at the row of mirrors, Chen-gu sucked in a cold breath. He then noticed, situated right at the middle of the mirrors, 3 wooden chairs. 3 at once. Chen-gu bit on his lips before walking over to the chairs, his every action reflected in the mirror. Facing his own reflection in the mirror amid an empty dance studio at midnight, Chen-gu felt increasingly unsettled. Resisting the urge to break the mirrors, he toppled the 3 chairs to their sides, and like the chair he had found earlier, all of them had a girl's name written underneath them. Including the chair at the girls' dormitory, I've stumbled across 5 chairs already. If every single one of them represents a girl, then this means I'm dealing with the spirits of 5 girls. So, the question is, what has really happened to them? Chen-gu could not deduce the truth since there were plenty of clues still to be found. He returned the 3 chairs to how they had been before turning his head to look around the room. Due to the wall of mirrors, the dance studio felt larger and emptier than it was. The place is so clean. It has been probably cleaned more than once recently. There was no visible trash on the floor, and this was not good news for Chin-gu. Someone has messed with the place already. Hopefully, the red dancing shoes haven't been tossed out. Chin-gu moved away from the wall of mirrors to the corner of the dance studio. The wall was covered with various certificates and accolade. There was also something that looked like a results list. After taking a closer look, Chin-gu found an anomaly. The first place of the list had been crossed off with a marker pen. A list without the winner. Chin-gu found all of the girls' names, including Qian Yujiao, on the list, but he could not find Zhangya. He moved his gaze away, and one of the pictures on the wall grabbed his attention. It was a group photo of 6 individuals. 5 of them were smiling brightly at the camera in a group hug while the 6th stood alone in the corner, quite a distance away from the rest. The photo had been manipulated to cut her out. If not for the snow-white dance shoes that peeked out from the corner, Chin-gu would have thought this was a group photo of 5 girls. These are all individual photos or group photos. Why isn't there a photo of the whole class? Chin-gu aimed his phone at the wall and snapped a photo. Then, moving forward along the wall, he soon stopped before a room without a sign. Compelled by curiosity, he pushed the door open and walked into it. The small room was equipped with a desk, a dresser, and a single bed. This appears to be the office of the teacher, but why is there a bed? The teacher needed to work the night shift. Chin-gu ransacked the room in the hope of locating the red dancing shoes. Unfortunately, the dresser was empty, and the drawers of the desk were filled with nothing but photocopies of winning certificates. Looks like the dance students here were all very talented, since they won so many prizes. Chin-gu picked up a few random pieces to look at, and one of them had the name of Qian Yujiao's group printed on it. Swan Lake Citywide Ballet Group Competition Champion. This means that they were qualified to join the statewide competition. This certificate was not pasted on the wall outside, and most curiously, the winning group was supposed to have 6 names, but the last name had once again been crossed off. It's the same as the result list. Chin-gu wandered around the room for a little while longer before leaving it empty-handed. Chin-ji's heart skipped a beat when he pulled the door open. The 3 chairs had moved from their original position to a spot closer to the door that he had just exited. It has started again. Chin-gu told himself to just ignore those chairs. He rushed to look for other clues. If he could not come up with any clues for the next 3 minutes, he had decided to leave the activity center. Using his phone as a light source, Chin-gu walked to the deepest edge of the dance studio before he found the door that said the girls' dressing room. According to rumors, the girls' bathroom and dressing room are where the yin energy is the most concentrated at any school. I'll need to be extra careful. He pushed the door slowly open. The dressing room was lined on both sides by steel lockers, and a long wooden chair sat in the middle. So, this is what a girl's dressing room looks like. This was the first time Chin-gu had entered such a place. He left the door half closed and walked into the room to pull open one of the lockers. A girl's school uniform was placed on the top level of the iron shelf. The design was different from other public school, it was more exquisite and prettier. The skirt barely reaches my knees, isn't that a bit too short? Chin-gu searched through the uniform's pockets and found nothing. He looked down the shelf and spotted a pair of white dancing shoes. The color is not right, not the ones I'm looking for. After closing the locker room, Chin-gu realized there was a small card pasted above the lock. It had the girl's name written on it. Now, this should make my life easier. Using his phone, he examined the names on the lockers, but after one round, he still had not found Zhangya's name. However, he did find a solitary locker at the corner, isolated from the rest without a marking or a name. The owner of this locker seems to have been ostracized by the rest. Chin-gu opened the door, and other than a dirted ballet dress that sat on the top level of the shelf, there was nothing else. No name and ostracized, who could this locker belong to? Chen-gu already had the answer inside his heart. He took out the dress and realized there were 5 candy boxes that had gone sour hidden underneath the dress. What are these for? Presents? Chen-gu placed the ballet dress on the wooden chair and picked up the candy boxes. Every box had been hand-wrapped, and each one of them had a girl's name written on top. Every name was different, but the handwriting was similar, so they probably came from the same person. These candy boxes were most likely the presents that she prepared. When Chen-gu picked up the last box, he noticed a picture that was placed at the bottom. The picture was the complete version of the picture that was stuck on the wall outside. On the back of it was written, "Congratulations to Room 414 for winning the qualifications to enter the statewide competition." The front showed 6 girls. 5 of them were happily celebrating on the right side on the picture while the 6th girl was standing about half a palm away from the rest. The girl had a tall figure, about 1.7 meters, and she looked like the main character of Swan Lake, graceful, pure, gentle, and beautiful. Even in the same picture, her supernatural grace put her apart from the rest. Could this be Zhanya? Muttered Chen-gu. He really could not reconcile the girl in the picture with the cruel and vicious red specter. It was a pure accident that Chen-gu mentioned Zhanya's name, but when he did so, the lockers in the girls' dressing room started to creak and rattle. It sounded like they were overloaded and were about to burst. On top of that, Chen-gu could hear an insistent banging noise coming from outside the door, like someone was trying to get in. Who is it? After shoving the picture inside his pocket, Chen-gu turned towards the half-closed door as his grip on the mallet tightened. He looked through the opening and saw that the 3 wooden chairs had formed a barricade at the entrance. You really think I don't have the guts to smash you all into pieces? Chen Ji's back was drenched in cold sweat, but he did keep his word as he walked toward the chairs with the mallet in hand. There was no other exit from the girls' dressing room. If he didn't clear a way out for himself, things would only get worse for him. Chen Ji's eyes wandered outwards as he tried to plan his escape route. However, his legs froze when his eyes landed on the wall of mirrors in the dance studio. The mirrors were reflecting the situation in the dance studio. The only difference was there were 3 girls sitting on the 3 chairs. Teetering bodies, dirted school uniforms, pale faces, and moving mouths like they were trying to say something. The 3 girls' faces were frozen in fear and terror, and their bodies seemed to have grown out of the wooden chairs. As his gaze alternated between the mirrors and the entrance of the girls' dressing room, a chill crept over Chen Ji's heart. Just not too long ago, he had tipped the chair over and observed them closely. Could that be considered my first intimate contact with a female? He shivered involuntarily, and his footsteps that headed toward the door hastened. As he wandered closer to the exit, the 3 chairs shuffled incrementally forward, and the lockers in the dressing room rattled slightly. After he mentioned Zhanya's name, things seemed to have changed inside the dance studio. The name appeared to be a taboo here. The mirrors can only reflect what is in the dance studio. Perhaps there's something even worse in the dressing room. I need to leave, pronto. As if confirming his thought, the steel doors of the lockers started to creak like something was trying to escape from them. Holding the mallet in his hand, Chen-gu raced toward the door. With a running start, Chen-gu used his legs to kick the chairs that blocked his way. As he tried to rush out, he felt something pull on his shoulders. He turned to look at the mirror, and in the reflection, 2 slender and pale arms could be seen hanging off his shoulders. Without a second thought, Chen-gu turned and started his assault. Bang! The mallet landed on the back of the chair, causing a crack to appear on the chair. The scream of a woman reverberated in his ears. In the mirror, he could see the female student on the chair glare fiendishly at his back while her arms encircled themselves tightly around his shoulders like she was trying to press him onto the seat of the chair. What is the purpose of her doing this? Could this be some kind of evil musical chairs game where my soul will be eternally trapped inside the chair if I sit on it? The force on his shoulders gradually increased as pairs of pale arms latched themselves onto him, trying to pull him back into the girls' dressing room. To make matters worse, Chen-gu could hear shuffling from the outside corridor, and several seconds later, another wooden chair appeared at the entrance of the dance studio. My luck is always used at the worst possible moment. It chooses a time like this to make me popular with the girls. Chen-gu was at his limit. Instead of running away, he shifted to attack mode. With one hand on the chair's back, he used his other hand to swing the mallet around, laying waste to the chairs that surrounded him. When his mallet formed the first crack on the chair, Chen-gu had noticed that the expression of the female student shifted from pleading to venomous resentment. Through the shift in expression, Chen-gu came up with the conclusion that the chairs should be their items of possession, similar to how Xiao Xiao's family attached themselves to the ragdolls. Demolishing the items of attachment won't destroy them, but at least it'll be able to injure them. The force on him intensified. A newbie who had not experienced this before would probably have ended up as a willing lamb for this group of girls by now. Unfortunately, their opponent was Chen-gu. This proprietor of a haunted house had just spent a night at a haunted apartment with a serial killer. Chen-gu still knew fear, but after multiple incidents, his resistance to fear had been trained. Even when he was in fear or shock, he could still manage to make the correct decision, and his grip on the mallet didn't waver. Bang! Chen-gu smashed the chair and gripped the ends of the chair to swing at another chair. The image reflected in the mirror was a bit hard to describe in words, but Chen-gu did not have time to deal with that anymore. He used about 10 seconds to destroy one of the chairs. Just as he turned to aim his wrath at the second chair, he felt something grip his neck. Turning his head to the mirror, he saw a pale hand choking his throat. His opponent seemed to have given up the thought of pressing him onto the chair and decided to kill him instead. This shift in situation did not slow Chen-gu down, instead, it only made him more vicious as he gripped the chairs and smashed them at the wall. As the chairs cracked, the force around his neck lightened. When all three chairs were nothing but splinters, the chokehold around his neck finally disappeared. Leaving these things behind benefits no one. Later, I'll burn all of you to help you seek closure. Chen-gu leaned against the mirror and tried to catch his breath. There were visible strangle marks around his neck. The fighting must have created tons of commotion. This will definitely attract the attention of the person who is following me. I'll need to leave as soon as possible. Anyway, the red dancing shoes don't seem to be here. This place was definitely haunted, so Chen-gu didn't want to stay at the dance studio anymore. The sound of the rattling of the lockers inside the girls' dressing room intensified, and that was not something that could be caused by a draft. Other than that, there were many other curious happenings like the sudden deepening in the colors of the walls and floor as well as the weird ping, ping noises from the corridor that had gotten far more frequent. Just as Chen-gu prepared to leave, he almost tripped from someone pulling on his lower calf. Chen-gu turned to look at the mirror and saw the three female students were pulling on his leg, their fingernails almost pushing into Chen-ji's skin. Seeing this, Chen-gu also grew desperate. He smacked his mallet down on the wooden splinters, but no matter how hard he smashed, the girls did not release their grips on his calf. The weird noise in the corridor was getting closer, and the vengeful faces that were pulling on Chen-gu started to laugh maniacally. A heavy cloth seemed to fall over the dance studio because the light from his phone started to twist as the heavy stench that Chen-gu had caught a hint of earlier started to suffuse the air. There's a scarier presence hiding at this school. Chen-gu was spooked by the thought in his mind. He dared to come to this school so late at night mainly because he assumed Zhangya was the scariest presence this school had to offer. He was there to do a favor for Zhangya, so she had no reason to harm him. This is bad. Something seemed to have reached the door of the dance studio, and the stink in the air intensified. The three girls on the floor were glaring at Chen-gu with fierce and sinister expressions. Chen-ji's back was leaning against the mirror. He reached into his pocket, and his fingertip had just touched the doll when the weird noise at the door retreated with a speed that was faster than it was when it arrived. Then, the stink in the air slowly vanished. What happened? It feels like the thing outside the door was scared. All the weird noises disappeared instantly, and Chin-gu could only hear his heartbeat then. The light twisted at a greater degree than before, and the temperature in the room seemed to have dropped further. What is happening? The pulling on his calf had also disappeared. Chin-gu lowered his head and saw the 3 female students were hiding as far away as they could and looking at the space behind him with desperation in their eyes. Behind me? Chin-gu turned his head awkwardly around to face the tall mirror. The image reflected back at him was not his own but a woman in a blood-red school uniform looking down at him. Chin-gu was only half a finger away from the mirror, so he got a much better view than he would have liked. The elegant school uniform was dripping with fresh blood that caused it to stick to her body. Her face was hidden behind her hair, and the overly pale skin that was exposed looked scary. The cold light from the phone screen twisted, and Chin-gu could feel his limbs becoming frozen. He used every ounce of energy in his body to stabilize his lips before he could utter the girl's name. Zhangya. As if hearing Chen-ji's voice, the girl slowly raised her head. The curtain of black hair parted to the side, and an unblemished face appeared in his view. However, the mirror started to mist when her head was only raised halfway. She took a step forward, and she disappeared from the mirror. Where did she go? Chin-gu stared at the mirror, and something even more curious happened. Cast from the phone's light, his shadow slowly stood up to stand behind him. Chin-gu could see that the shadow was about 1.7 meters tall. As the dripping sound of something like blood entered his ears, the shadow started to gain color. The bloodied uniform stuck to its body, and it was all red. Chin-gu stood where he was and did not dare move. The chilliness from his back had climbed up his spine to his brain. Right then, the red shadow took another step back to lean against his back. Standing back to back, Chen-ji's body froze. Even as he gasped for air, the sensation that he was running out of air would not go away. The specter has stuck to my back. Standing back to back was sometimes quite scary because you could not know who was standing behind you. Something cold seemed to reach for his fingers. Chin-gu did not dare turn to take a look. His frozen fingers slowly opened to allow the phone to slide to the floor. The light flickered twice before it switched off suddenly. Surrounded by darkness, the coldness behind his back continued to spread. Chin-gu couldn't even imagine the things that were happening to him. 2 a.m., inside an abandoned school's dance studio, facing a tall mirror, standing back to back with a red specter. In a way, I guess one could call this romance. Various thoughts crossed Chen-ji's mind. Something was holding his hand, and it made him feel increasingly cold. The hair of the girl behind him was moving as it entwined itself with Chen-ji's hair. What is she planning to do? My mission here is to find the red dancing shoes. I'll fail the mission if I am unable to do that before dawn. However, Chen-ji's body was frozen in place, and the only thing he could do was stare at the mirror before him. He did not notice it initially, but several seconds later, he realized with a start that fuzzy shadows were forming inside the mirror. He widened his eyes as the shadows started to become clearer. Wait, aren't these the girls who are trapped inside the chairs? Inside the mirror, 5 girls in clean uniforms entered the dance studio. Their outfits were completely different from what Chin-gu had seen earlier, so he suspected that the images he saw now were reflecting scenes that happened years ago. The 5 girls walked toward the mirror, laughing among themselves. Soon after they entered the studio, Zhangya showed up. Even though they were wearing the same uniform, Zhangya carried herself in a different way than the rest of the girls. She was carrying a bag in her hands. Chin-gu had seen this bag before inside the girls' dressing room. It was holding the 5 candy boxes. Zhangya seemed to be in quite a good mood. She walked into the dressing room with hurried steps, and several minutes later, all 6 girls came out wearing their ballet dresses. The situation had not changed much. The 5 girls were in their little group while Zhangya tailed behind alone. Not long after they started their training, the dance studio's door was pushed open. A female teacher walked in holding the Swan Lake winning certificate in her hand. She was talking animatedly with the girls, probably encouraging and congratulating them. That day was probably not a normal school day because Chingu didn't see any other students. The 6 of them were likely there to do intensive training to prepare for the statewide competition. The female teacher left after half an hour. After making sure the teacher had left, the 5 girls stopped practicing and started playing on their phones and chatting while lying on the floor. The only one practicing was Zhanya. Then, one of the girls said something while pointing at Zhanya. The rest of the girls laughed with the exception of Zhanya. However, she did not seem to mind it too much. After practicing for a little while longer, she stopped to rest. Then she turned to walk into the dressing room and came out with the bag of candy boxes. Zhanya passed them to the girls, but as one of them reached for it, she was stopped by one of the other girls, who was as tall as Zhanya. She said many things while pointing her finger assertively at Zhanya. She then ran into the dressing room and came out with a school bag. She pulled out several love letters from it. From the name, Chingu knew they were all addressed to Zhanya. This could not really be considered an argument because it was totally one-sided, dominated by the other girl who was weirdly agitated. Zhanya's candy boxes were thus rejected. She placed them back into the bag and left. Chingu thought that was the end, but not long after that, the door to the dance studio was pushed open again. The few girls were startled. Thinking it was the teacher, they quickly climbed up from the floor and started to practice. A fuzzy shadow of a male walked in. He was about 1.8 meters tall, slouching, and very large in size. The man said something to the girls, and only 2 said something in return to him. Chingu was confused by his identity. The girls soon returned to their practice, and the man entered the office. Later, he opened the office door and waved for Zhanya to come to him. Zhanya appeared like she did not know or even trust the man. She walked toward the office with hesitation and stood at the door but did not go in. The mirror could not reflect what was inside the office. However, about 8 seconds later, the scene on the mirror darkened as Zhanya ran out of the office. Holding his arm, the man chased after her while cursing all the way. All 5 girls in the dance studio saw this, but all of them sat where they were. None of them were willing to go to Zhanya's aid. Soon, Zhanya was cornered at a space that was nowhere close to the door. She screamed loudly for help, but it was not answered. The girls acted like they did not even hear her. The man said many unsavory things as he closed in on Zhanya. Zhanya's hands had reached the edge of the window behind her. There was only one exit left. Looking at the scene that played itself on the mirror, Chingu was suddenly reminded of the lines that appeared on the black phone when he won the love letter. Her eyes exposed, cheeks white as ash, the moment she fell off the building, she became the taboo of the school. Red dancing shoes and blood-dyed uniform, even her name became something that was only uttered in frantic whispers. The man studied the empty window closely but did not rush down to save Zhanya. Instead, he took several steps back to stop beside the 5 girls, who were in complete shock. The dance studio was extremely quiet. In the mirror, the man was the first to recover. He stood before the 5 girls and started to glare threateningly at them. One of the girls started to weep, so the man yanked her up from the floor and pointed his finger at her face while his lips moved. The girls shook her head vehemently. Then, the girl who was as tall as Zhanya stood up. She walked over to the man and started to help him persuade the other girls. From how she carried herself, she seemed to know the man and shared a more than friendly relationship. Perhaps it was even she who planned for the man to appear just after the female teacher left. With the girl's persuasion and the man's threat, the other girls finally nodded. After a few more minutes of discussion, the man was the first to leave. The 5 girls then entered the dressing room to change, and they all left soon after. The mirror returned to normal, but the atmosphere in the dance studio grew tense. Chingu could feel the chill coming from his back. It felt like he was carrying a frozen dead body. That's all. The mirror only recorded what had happened in the dance studio but did not go into what happened next. Chin-gu believed there had to be more than that. After falling from the fourth floor, as long as it wasn't head first, Zhanya still had a chance of being rescued. Red Spectre harbors deep resentment. Maybe the fatty snuffed out Zhanya's last breath because he was afraid of being exposed. The water system of the activities center has been renewed, so perhaps the fatty used the system to deal with the body. As the thought cropped up in his mind, Chin-gu rejected it. Zhanya was lost inside the school, so the police had to have been involved. Furthermore, cleaning up a body was not as simple as depicted on those crime dramas. Sometimes, the more one tried to hide, the more obvious it became. Chin-gu was curious what happened next, but the mirror had stopped moving. Perhaps I should give Inspector Lee a call. This is a murder, and Western Zhejiang's private academy is within their jurisdiction, so he must have some kind of record. Chen Ji's idea was not bad, but when he planned to pick up his phone, a scream came from behind him. Zhanya's hair started to twine up his shoulders like snakes, curling themselves around his neck and chest, tying them close together. "I'm not leaving, I just want to help you," Chin-gu argued before his breath was choked out of him. However, the black hair continued to constrict like a boa constrictor suffocating its prey. Perhaps from Zhanya's perspective, this was the only way the two of them could be together. This was true love. Chin-gu had escaped from the wolf's den to enter the tiger's cave. Now he understood why Zhanya's love letter was a curse. This lady did not like living man, and the more she loved a man, the greater her desire to kill him. Standing back to back, his limbs too weak to even resist, all Chin-gu could do was to argue his case. "I will help you call the police and have law enforcement provide justice by bringing all who have harmed you to the judgment of law." The words felt ineffective even to Chen Ji's ears. Zhanya's situation was unique. Unlike the family of four at Ping An Apartments, she did not need him for revenge. Those who had harmed her were trapped inside chairs already. And Chin-gu believed she had plenty to do with that. The kind and graceful Zhanya had been completely corrupted into a mad specter. Chin-gu did not even dare to imagine the type of disaster that had befallen the five girls before they were trapped inside the chairs. Chin-gu had given up. This was how he was going to go, but as he prepared for death, the black hair stopped attacking. "What's wrong?" "There are still people who haven't received their just punishment," he uttered quickly, to stress that he would help Zhanya capture all those who had harmed her. The black hair started to release as if Zhanya was also considering the options. All Chin-gu could do then was wait. The dark dance studio returned to silence. 10 seconds later, an unexpected thing happened. While he was dancing on the line of life and death, the door to the dance studio was suddenly pushed open, and a lanky guy poked his head in to look around. When he saw Chin-gu, a cruel, excited grin lit up his face, and the hand with the peony tattoo pulled out a fruit knife from his back pocket. However, coincidentally, when Chin-gu saw the man, he also smiled, his expression saying, "You're finally here. Surprised to see me? You've left too many clues. The bricks on the outer walls had your footsteps, and the window on the first floor of this building had fresh dirt and grass stuck to it. After entering the building, your footprints are practically everywhere. You're too careless, and now, you shall pay." The man standing at the door was naturally Zhang Peng. His eyes were bloodshot, and his mental state was unusually animated. He held the fruit knife in his usable arm. However, to Chen Ji's surprise, after Zhang Peng said that long speech, as he took the first step into the dance studio, the expression on his face shifted drastically. Earlier, he had been vicious, but now, he retreated worriedly, his eyes glowing with caution and resentment. The mirror monster has taken control of his body. Before Chin-gu could react, Zhang Peng started to race down the stairs. He seemed to have spotted something scary. His limbs were twisted in unnatural angles as he ran, which gave him the impression of a puppet being pulled along by his master. The black hair around Chin-gu disappeared, along with the girl behind him. All he could see was a red flash across the mirror. A chase seemed to have begun. The chilliness from his back gradually dissipated, and life returned to Chen Ji's frozen limbs. He picked up his phone and backpack before racing toward the stairs, his speed no less than Zhang Peng's. This bloody heart mission will have to be put on the back burner for now. If I truly earn Zhangya's affection, my life in the future will be a little too exciting for me to handle. Chen Gu dashed out of the activities center. He took a glance at the surrounding dark forest and used his phone to call Inspector Li. The phone rang once before it was picked up, and Inspector Li's voice came through. Xiao Chen. Did you run into Zhang Peng? Western Zhejiang's private academy. Zhang Peng is here. Other than that, I have something important to tell you, Chen Gu said through heavy breaths as he raced toward the school gate. Fu Jun, De Yong, contact the investigation team immediately. Inspector Li didn't hang up. After he gave his orders, he returned his attention to Chen Gu. What is this other thing you want to talk about? I discovered another murder case at Western Zhejiang's private academy. You found yet another murder case? Inspector Li's tone on the other end of the phone was puzzled to say the least. 4 years ago, a female student by the name of Zhang Ye jumped out of the building, but there is more to her death than suicide. Chen Gu said firmly. Wait a minute, let me go look at the files first. If the victim's family had asked for an autopsy, we should have the record of it somewhere. Inspector Li didn't hang up as he turned on the lights of the records room to search for the files. He finally found something 5 minutes later. Wait, why does Western Zhejiang's private academy sound so familiar? Xiao Chen, get out of that school now. I'm already heading for the gate, what's wrong? That school is just weird, I can't explain it to you in just a few sentences, but I can give you a number. 6 people committed suicide within the span of 2 weeks at that school, and their deaths were all very weird. The sound of paper flipping could be heard through the phone as Inspector Li looked through the files. That sounds about right. That number fits what I'm thinking. The school gate was within Chen Ji's view, he could exit the place soon. Fits what you're thinking. What exactly is happening over there? Don't mind that, check whether the name of the first suicide victim is Zhang Ye or not. Chen Gu was in a hurry to confirm his suspicion. Inspector Li double-checked the records before replying. Indeed, the name is Zhang Ye, but she did die from a fall. It is a suicide because the mortician did not find any other wounds on her body. On the day of the discovery, the police did visit the crime scene for investigation. The girl fell from the 4th floor's dance studio, the window she fell from was undamaged, and the soundproof foam around it showed no signs of cleaning. So, from this, we confirmed Zhang Ye jumped out of the building without outside influence. Without outside influence? Inspector Li, have you considered that she was forced to do so? If she didn't jump, she would have been raped. Chen Gu relayed the scenes he had seen in the mirror. We considered that as well, and there are testimonies from Zhang Ye's roommates in the records. All 5 girls said that they didn't know anything. Zhang Ye jumped off the building after their class was over, so Zhang Ye was inside the studio alone. According to their testimonies, Zhang Ye had always suffered from high stress, was prone to solitude, and was perhaps even mentally unstable. To confirm their testimonies, the police at the time even verified their accounts with the girls from the class, and everyone agreed. Zhang Ye is definitely not the person they described, they all banded together to frame her. Zhang Ye was feeling indignant on Zhang Ye's behalf. He did not expect that the whole class would gang up on Zhang Ye, the girl didn't even do anything wrong. What kind of person Zhang Ye was, you and I will never know, but the evidence doesn't lie. Inspector Li didn't understand why Chen Gu was so agitated. In any case, get out of that school as soon as you can. We're sending our men to come fetch you. They were all lying. Take a closer look at Zhang Ye's time of death, it should be before the class was over. They lied on the time of death, so those 5 girls were accomplices. The volume of Chen Ji's voice inadvertently increased. That's where you're wrong. Zhang Ye's time of death was between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Those 5 girls left school at around 5:30 p.m., their usual time of departure. Inspector Lee didn't know how happened to Chingu at the school, so he stood from an outsider's perspective to analyze the situation. Impossible. It is indeed possible. The mortician conducted a detailed analysis based on livor mortis and rigor mortis. Zhang Ye's time of death is indeed between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. The cause of death was a broken spine. Other than that, there were wounds to her skull, calcaneus, and hip bone, all common injuries suffered by suicide victims that died from falling. Chengu had no way to retort. He stopped where he was. If Zhang Ye did jump off the building before the 5 girls left, this means that she didn't die instantly after the fall. However, due to the broken bones that incapacitated her body, she could only lie in a pool of her own blood as she waited for death to come, tortured by pain and heartache until she truly died around 6 to 8 p.m. Your hypothetical scenario is possible, but you have forgotten one thing. If the girl still had a breath in her after she fell off the building, why wouldn't the 5 girls who were there save her? Even if they had their own reasons not to save her, other people at the school would have discovered her. It was a holiday, and the school was deserted other than the 6 of them who were at school to practice for the upcoming statewide competition. Their teacher had already left beforehand, and even if there were guards or someone of the sort, isn't it possible that they were sent away by people with ill intentions? Chen Gu posed a differing opinion. I'm not going to argue that with you. After all, it is a moot point arguing whether Zhang Ye died from suicide or murder. You believe those 5 girls were the real murderers in Zhang Ye's death and collaborated with each other to provide false testimony, but 2 weeks after that, these 5 girls died one after another. The real murderers you assumed are now dead, so how are we supposed to investigate this case? Inspector Lee was more worried about Chen Ji's safety. Inspector Lee, I never said that these 5 girls are the murderers, they are merely accomplices. The real murderer who caused Zhang Ye's death is a fatty that is 1.8 meters tall with a slouched back. That's quite a detailed description. Mind telling me how you came to that conclusion? 4 years ago, the security at Western Zhejiang's private academy hadn't been completed yet, and all the witnesses are now dead. But you're telling me there's a real murderer on the run. How do you expect me to believe you? Inspector Lee had worked overtime for the past few days already thanks to the Ping and Apartments case. It was why he was still at the station even at 2 a.m. Lethargy could be heard laced in his words. Chen Gu could discern the suspicion in Inspector Lee's voice. We can start by investigating the people who are related to Western Zhejiang's private academy from 4 years ago. We have to find this person. He was at the crime scene. Chen Gu, starting a police investigation is not a game. Do you know how difficult it is to reopen a case that was closed 4 years ago? Even if you can convince me, it'll be pointless if you cannot convince my superiors. What we need is actual proof, not suspicion, not speculation. Everything that I've said is the truth. That is according to you. Inspector Lee had started rearranging the files to put them back where they were. Do you mind telling me why you are suddenly so interested in this case? You don't give me the impression of a young man who is filled with a sense of justice. Why am I so insistent? Chen Gu was startled by this sudden question from Inspector Lee. He was reminded of the aid that Zhang Ye had lent him when he was trapped inside the wooden hut, as well as the chilling loneliness coming from his back when Zhang Ye was standing behind him inside the dance studio. I still don't understand what you're saying. Inspector Lee continued after a long pause. But holding up justice is the job of law enforcement. Since you've brought up the suspicion, after the case on Ping and Apartments is wrapped up, I'll personally help you look into this. Thank you, Uncle San Bao. Chen Gu sighed in relief. Capturing the real murderer, I suppose, is giving Zhang Ye some kind of release. With regards to this godforsaken place, I really don't want to return again. He hung up the phone and turned to look at Western Zhejiang's private academy one last time. To his shock, Red Spectre Zhang Ye was just standing behind him. There were about 3 meters between them. Fresh blood dripping on her school uniform, Zhanya looked at Chingu with her head tilted. This time, she didn't move closer, and her expression was a bit weird.